Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with our new fanfic, which is What If Naruto Fell in Love with Yuga Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and please subscribe to the channel. It motivates me to upload more fanfic like these for you all. Now let's start the fanfic. Haki Kakashi considered himself the elite, graduating at an early age. It didn't take long enough until he was promoted to Chunin Junin and then straight to a new when the Sand Dame lined him for taking a gen and team he didn't like it one bit. It got worse since all the teams who were lined with him ended up failing from lack of teamwork. When Team 7 was given to him at first, he thought it would be just like all the prior teams. However, when Sasuke offered food to Sakura, he actually considered this team to be the only one who got the idea of teamwork. Clearly he didn't expect to carry one of his students on his arms after a Chidori wound on his chest from another one of his students channeling chakra to his feet. He needed to get back to Konoha as fast as possible, otherwise Naruto's life would be over. On the way, Kakashi cursed Uchi Sasuke for what he did, both against the village and against Naruto, attempting to kill him with a Chidori on his chest. Most of all, he was cursing himself for two reasons. First of all, he cursed his blind trust in Sas, and second, he cursed himself for teaching his assassination technique to someone who would use it on his best friend. After a while, the gates approached, and in seconds Kakashi passed by it. He couldn't afford to wait since he needed Tsunade or Shisen right away. In 10 seconds he barged in Tsunade's office with a bloody Naruto on his hands. At first the Hokage objected as to the reason of the intrusion. However, upon seeing whose body was on Kakashi's arms, the doctor in her sprung into action, and within minutes Naruto was in a hospital bed, getting all patched up and receiving some chakra incision in order for his wounds to heal faster. The next day all members of the retrieval mission returned home, although some of them almost didn't make it. Akamaiki Choi was suffering from the effects of his family's chakra pill. Hyuga Ne came with a giant hole inches away from a fatal wound. The rest of the group sustained minor injuries and was already cleared from the hospital. The leader of the mission and only Chunin of the group, Nar Shikamaru, was wondering about his first leading mission and how much of a failure it was. Truth be told, no one could blame him, seeing that his team was up against Junin level shinobi and somehow survived the assault. Also, they would be able to get Sasuke back had 1K Amuro not stepped in to aid the enemy. However, Shikamaru, even after both Tsunade and his father encouraged him to grow as a shinobi, still blamed himself for almost getting 2 or 3 of his friends killed. That doesn't mean that the Nare would ever give up the path he chosen, not because it would be so damn troublesome as he put it, but as his dad put it, not every mission goes AC according to plan, and that the failures exists to show what needs to be changed or improved. Shikamaru used this failed opportunity to improve your abilities as both a shinobi and a leader. Use this mission to be better prepared for the future so that mistakes like this can no longer occur, said Shikaku at the time. And Shikamaru acknowledged these words to heart. He would get stronger and he would improve his abilities. Man, this is troublesome, but I'll ask Ashuma-sense to help me with training, thought Shikamaru as he went home to rest after what seemed to be the longest mission of his life so far. However, while Shikamaru found the answer to his questions, there was one specific blonde who was lying on the hospital bed, not wanting to see anyone right now. He just looked outside as the sun was about to leave Konoha for the day and let the moon do its job. One would find it strange to see a usually hyperactive boy choosing instead to look at the window in pure reflection of the current events that occurred. However, one single event still didn't let his mind be. If it wasn't for the damn fox, Sasuke's Chidori would have killed him by either piercing along or the immense amount of blood loss. Naruto wondered if truly Sasuke was being controlled by Orochimaru, as he as well as everyone presumed. Nonetheless, only Naruto himself could vow for who was in control of the Uchi's body at the moment, simply because he was the one who fought him for the first time since he met Sasuke. Naruto was in doubt over Sasuke's behavior. Of course he knew Sasuke was a brooding bastard, but never did he think Sasuke would pierce his lung so ruthlessly. Before these events made Naruto realize that maybe he was the only one being delusional as to believe that Sasuke wouldn't be capable of something like this. Right before the Chidori attack, Sasuke did admit that Naruto was his best friend. However, after the attack, the blonde questioned himself as to the Uchi really understanding what meant the expression best friend killing someone they consider a friend. It would be safe to say the person was mad, but to kill a best friend, it would be like saying the Man didn't have blood running through his veins. He remembered how much the others suffered as well trying to bring Sake back, and it sickened him to realize that had Sasuke not left, none of his real friends would be injured in the first place for the first time since he met the Ucha. Naruto became skeptical over his friendship with Uchi Sas. What if Sas was always like this and the cursed seal was just the push needed for him? If such a thing was true, then why did I ever bother? Why did I even bother to see if I surpassed him or not? Those were the thoughts that now occupied Naruto's mind. Up to the point of him going through every experience that he had inside his mind and wondered why he focused only on beating the traitor than trying to improve the areas he lacked. Naruto immediately felt like he played the part of an idiot. All this time he was remembering every single screw-up he ever committed and how delusional he was for thinking that with just Cage Bun and an incomplete Renin he would be able to grow as a shobi. He now acknowledged that everything he ever thought about, everything he ever holds on to, wasn't what it should be. Not focusing enough at the academy, not focusing enough to learn the basics before attempt the harder techniques. In fact, he remembered only passing the academy because he was able to do a technique that didn't even require a lot of knowledge to begin with. The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu shadow clone technique did only require one hand seal and lot of chakra to waste. The only thing he needed for this technique was to be able to mold chakra, and that he learned just after he entered the academy, now grinding his teeth in agony upon not applying himself when needed. In the past, Naruto cursed his very existence and also his lack to concentrate on his goal. This was the scene that a certain silver-haired Junin saw upon opening the door. Kakashi knew Naruto didn't want to see anyone and he was worried for his student. Usually Naruto wouldn't behave like this, and truth be told, Kakashi was a little frightened that this event ended up closing Naruto's heart for good. He understood that Sasuke meant to Nar just as Obito meant to him, and if Obito ended up wanting to kill him, Kakashi would be desolated. Right now, Naruto, upon acknowledging his sensei's presence, kept staring at him with a disapproving glare since he thought he told everything one that he didn't want to see anyone right now. Can I help you, sensei? Asked Naruto with a tone that showed Kakashi that his presence was unwanted right now. Kakashi, for his part, awoke from his wonderings and turned to study Naruto's strangely dark blue eyes right now. Usually Naruto's eyes displayed a bright ocean blue that could be quite enticing. However, now the Naruto in front of him wasn't the real Naruto. Well, can't a sensei come to visit his student? I happen to know that you didn't want to see anyone right now, but I just wanted to talk for a second, said Kakashi as he picked up a chair on the far corner and placed it so that he could sit right in front of Naruto. The blonde for his part eyed Kakashi's movements and wondered what the hell Kakashi wanted to talk to him in the first place. Naruto assumed that Kakashi would try explaining a different version of the situation, maybe try running some damage control on it, but he allowed Kakashi to begin the conversation, to which the silver-haired Junin nodded and turned to state, listen Naruto, I'm here to talk to you in regards of what you're feeling right now towards your teammate, asked Kakashi, but the look that Naruto returned to him was something he never thought he would see. Naruto's eyebrows were slightly lifted as in Kakashi just said something curious to the blonde. Naruto was also smiling as well, but it was not even remotely close to one of his goofy smiles that everyone grew accustomed to. It was an ironic smile, particularly used when someone uses sarcasm to answer a question. Explain the word teammate for me, Kakashi sensei. I may not have much experience with this kind of thing, but I know that teammates don't try to kill their teammates with a chidori on the chest. It was ironic though that just moment before he did this, he considered me as his best friend. If he did this to his best friend, I don't want to know what he does to his enemies, retorted Naruto, as in Kakashi just committed the biggest mistake of all times. However, he knew he was right, and also Kakashi knew he was right. After hearing the response, Kakashi wasn't surprised, nor was he shocked to hear Naruto speaking like this. Nonetheless, Kakashi's reason for visiting wasn't only related to how Naruto was doing, but also to hear the blonde's report on their fight. When questioned, Naruto told him everything that occurred after he left Rockla to fight the Kaya person. After Kakashi lifted himself from the chair, he wished nice recovery to Naruto and went for the door before being stopped by the blonde. Kakashi sensei, I want to ask you something, said Naruto, to which Kakashi nodded and turned to stare the blonde, who by now was remembering what he was thinking just before his sensei entered the room. Do you believe in the word regret? Asked Naruto, earning a Suspicious look from Kakashi, who clearly didn't see this coming, especially one coming from Uzumaki Naruto, the boy who always screamed his never giving up slogan after he returned to seating at the chair he once was. Naruto continued, "Tell me something," Kakashi said, "Sensei. And be honest about it, on your point of view, how I stand in terms of shinobi abilities," asked Naruto once again, now showing Kakashi what was this all about. Turning to think for a bit, at first he wondered why Nar was asking said question, but thought about it either way. On a rational point of view, Kakashi didn't believe Naruto to have what it takes to become a ninja. Even though he was indeed a chakra house, his chakra control wasn't near as good as an average Jonin. His speed skills were mediocre at best, and his taijutsu is close to street fight as possible. However, he knew that once Naruto fixated his mind on something, he was certain Naruto would manage to finish no matter what. When he looked at Naruto's eyes, he knew Nar was waiting for a straight answer here, so he gave his point of view. If you want an honest opinion about it, you have a long way in front of you. If improvement is what you seek, your chakra control isn't appropriate and your fighting skills are close to a street fight. Above all things, a Jonin level shinobi has to have at least the academy level taijutsu and above water walking level of chakra control. Your ninjutsu could use some work, but this area is the least of your concern, stated Kakashi before he looked to Naruto, waiting for him to explode and demand him to take everything back. But surprisingly, he didn't. Naruto just stood there staring at Kakashi for a moment before smiling and nodding in appreciation. "I appreciate the honest answer, Kakashi-sensei, and I was wondering if you could help me with something. I can't leave here for another 2 days, so might as well get to training. Would you mind picking some books that will help me understand some concepts better?" asked Naruto, to which Kakashi looked at him as in Naruto grew another head. Naruto wanting to read books was really something he didn't expect. Nonetheless, Kakashi just nodded in affirmative and asked what he needed. "Thanks, well, I was wondering if the library had any scrolls on after academy taijutsu and chakra control. Also, I'm sure there is a book on ninjutsu I could learn apart from the 2 I already know," stated Naruto, to which Kakashi nodded and said he would see what he could find and then return soon. A few hours later, after giving Naruto some books about some forms of Tatu chakra control and D-Talk ranked ninjutsu techniques, Kakashi was in front of Tsunade, explaining Naruto's fight to her and also expressing his concerns about the blonde. Tsunade was impressed about hearing Naruto applying himself in studies and told Kakashi of what Jiraiya wants to do with Naruto once he received clearance from the hospital. Kakashi Jiraiya is going to take Naruto with him for a 2 years training trip. He plans to teach Nar better deals with the Kai's chakra as well as focus on some points the blonde lacked in his shinobi education. Now, considering that Naruto is already studying to correct his flaws, maybe Jiraiya can initiate him on more advanced forms of ninja arts. "Now you're saying that Naruto is now skeptical towards SAS," said Tsunade, with the late statement sounding like a question. "Yes, Tsunade-sama, according to him, someone who tries to kill him doesn't deserve to be called teammate." It was clear in his eyes how much hate and anger he is feeling right now. "I can only worry about his path now, that whatever innocence yet left in him now, it was completely shattered by Sasu's doing," said Kakashi, still looking down like he was considering the event to be somehow his fault. Looking at Naruto losing his innocence was enough to shatter whatever confidence Kakashi had in himself, both as a shinobi and as a teacher. Also, when Kakashi laid out Naruto's flaws, Kakashi knew that he should be the one correcting it, since Naruto was his student. After all, also he expected Nar to shout about not receiving fair treatment, but instead all the blonde did was appreciate his honest answer and ask for some books so that he could improve the area as he lacked at the moment. To Kakashi it felt like Naruto didn't need him for much. It went without saying though that his pain was visible in Tsunade caught it easily. "What are you thinking, Kakashi? What is it on your mind right now?" asked Tsunade, a little worried about seeing Kakashi's dejected face. Looking down the floor as in he was the one to blame for this whole situation ever occurring. Tsunade was surprised to see Naruto asking for some books and wondering why he didn't come for Kakashi for help. It couldn't be that Naruto didn't consider Kakashi to teach him what he needs to know. However, if that was the truth, then something happened to lead him to think about this. Lifting his head to look at the Hokage in the eye, he answered with all honesty possible, "Seeing Naruto asking for books to help him improve made me realize where I made a mistake out of pointing out Naruto's Mistake makes not one time I set myself to correct them, not even when he managed to succeed in passing to the last phase of the Chunin exams did I try to improve his abilities. Instead I focused on SAS and placed Naruto under the hands of EISU. Before Jiraiya came up and taught him some stuff, Naruto must believe that he wouldn't get any help from me, so he chose to train by himself. I guess I'm not a competent teacher as I led myself to believe, said Kakashi, to which Tsunade sighed, but she had already figured something like this happened. Speaking of Naruto as a subject, she could easily find a number of things that needed correction. However, Kakashi ended up neglecting the boy training, and that cost him dearly. Had the Sao's chakra not helped Naruto, Kakashi, I understand how you feel, but bear in mind that not everything is lost. Naruto will receive the training he needs from Jiraiya, and I'm sure he'll come back an entirely different shinobi. I just hope that he doesn't come back a different human being though, but that's something to worry for later. Also, since I nominated Sakura as my apprentice, I'm afraid Team 7 is adjourned until Naruto comes back from his training trip. Now the village is soon to recover its financial support it once had. In more missions requests are coming. I'm placing you on some of them. Present here tomorrow at 10 for debriefing, and I consider that you're not late this time if you know what's right for you, said Tsunade, more like threatening Kakashi, to which said man swallowed hard and left the place with Naruto. After Kakashi brought him the books, Naruto didn't waste time and took the taijutsu book. He initially thought about using Kage Bunshin all the time to do the fighting, however using said technique ended up misdirecting his concentration to the point of his attacks being pitiful to watch. As Naruto went through some advanced forms of taijutsu, he was remembering some aspects of the academy taijutsu style, which was good since he could practice now when he leaves the hospital. Defensive positions, offensive positions, Naruto was recollecting everything he saw at the academy, and he was remembering that he didn't use it once during his missions. It was already late at night, but the blonde didn't want to sleep right now. He's been lying down for enough time to condemn sleeping, so he instead focused on studying and improving his knowledge. He considered sleeping later since he wouldn't be able to leave the premises anyway, so he continued reading through several taijutsu katas, which consisted of attack and defensive forms of the fighting style. It didn't take long to finish the book since it contained a number of images to explain the positions rather than an actual text. Moving on, he took the chakra control book and was surprised to see that water walking and tree walking are just Janine level chakra control. According to the book, the next level would be suspending a kunai on top of the ninja's hand using chakra to sustain the object in the air. Naruto learned that in order to attain this level of chakra control, he had to constantly exhale a thin layer of chakra off his hand in order to keep the kisses suspended. He also learned that this exercise is extremely complex to do simply because, just like all kinds of chakra control exercises, using too much chakra will send the kunai flying, and too little the kunai wouldn't even leave the ninja's hand. He kept reading the book on chakra control all night and didn't even bother to look when the first ray of sunlight entered his room. He was few pages from finishing the book and his brain was already filled with valuable information both on taijutsu, katas and advanced chakra control exercises. Minutes after he closed the book and looked outside for a while, so many information being hidden, and he didn't even bother thinking about reading this earlier. There was only one book left to read, but this one he could wait a little bit. His head was already hurting from reading 2 books all night, and he guessed a little rest was a must. Before though, he turned to look outside one more time and managed to see a couple of ninjas jumping through rooftops in speeds he never seen before. They must be channeling chakra through their legs to accelerate their movements. I guess I could do that as well. That would improve my chakra control as well, thought Naruto as he closed his eyes and slept instantly. Little did he know though that a toad Sennin was observing him all the time since he arrived in town. Jiraiya heard from Tsunade and Kashi that Naruto chose to study ways to improve some of his flaws, and he couldn't help but be surprised about seeing Naruto reading not only a book but 2 books all night. Jiraiya considered focusing more on controlling Sao's chakra, however seeing the level of focus that the boy attained, he guessed that making him stronger would be better. A stronger body had a stronger spirit, and a stronger spirit wouldn't be subjected to being controlled by anyone. This Naruto was a wild card, isn't it? Asked Jiraiya, presumably to no one at all, until Kakashi's figure appeared hiding in the shadows, nodding. I guess his last fight showed a lot to him, and now he's correcting his flaws. Those books I gave him actually Contain Chunin level material. I guess this way I can make up for the lost time with him, said Kakashi while reading his all favorite book, earning a smile from the pervert Sanin, who in turn acknowledged Kakashi's feelings of guilt. Until Kakashi once again manifested, now that you're taking him with you, I believe he will improve a lot. More than with me, after all, you were the one who taught him the Rengen water walking and CIO's summoning technique, where I on the other hand taught him only tree walking, said Kakashi, to which Gia nodded. Don't be this way, Kakashi. Regret is not a word ninjas should rely on. Also, Naruto is now on his way to become a fine shinobi, which was quite surprising to me, at least, since when I first saw him the Brad was impulsive and annoying. I wonder if I should begin elemental training with him during the trip. Wonder what element is his chakra aligned with, asked Gia, mostly to himself, but Kakashi couldn't help but smile since he would know this information in a while. Looking to the room once again, Jiraiya saw Shizen entering and checking on Naruto's condition before writing on his file and leave the room. One thing that worried Jiraiya was that Naruto didn't have visitors, but then he remembered someone saying that Naruto wished to be left alone, so he didn't bother. However, just as he was about to turn and leave, he saw someone entering the room, and it turned out to be a few of his comrades, namely Sakura, Ino, Ne, Kba, Shikamaru, and Choi. After sneaking in, the group turned to watch the sleepy Nar, and a few noticed the books next to his bed. Sakura wondered why Nar wanted to be left alone just like everyone else did. She eventually went to check the books and was surprised to see Naruto reading for the first time. The group considered waking him up to talk to him, however it seemed that all of them chose to just look at him and wonder how could someone so hyperactive could sleep so peacefully like that. The sunlight didn't bother the blonde at all, and the light brightened his hair up to the point of showing a different image of Naruto to those who knew him. He seems different somehow, said Ino, standing next to Shikamaru and Choi, getting nods from everyone present except for Sakura, who in turn kept looking at him. Sakura wanted to hear confident words coming from the blonde, words like next time they will be able to bring Sake back, or I won't rest until we bring him back. With Sasuke gone, Nar was now her only source for strength. She wanted Nar to tell her about Sasuke's behavior, since the report on the mission was considered confidential to Janine apart from those who participated in the mission. I really wish to know more about what happened out there, though rumors had it that Naruto returned deeply hurt from the fight, but Sake wouldn't do such a thing to Naruto. They are teammates and friends, said Sakura, more like asking all those present for confirmation, but neither of them shared the same opinion. Ne, for instance, chose to reply against Sakura's comment, since he used to be like the Uchi in some way. Sakura, I don't concur with your assessment over the Uchi. It was because of him we all came back with near fatal wounds. Also, Naruto fought with the UCHA, so it's only logical to assume that the injury was caused by him. Sas is in darkness right now, and such a feat wouldn't be far from his kind of behavior. I happen to know that since until I fought against Naruto, I used to be like this as well. Naruto rescued me from the darkness, but he couldn't do the same thing for Sasuke, stated Ne, to which Sakura looked at the stoic Hyuga but couldn't counter his argument. She knew how cold Sas became after the incident with Chimaru. I don't mean to hurt you, Sakura, but Sas's actions were appalling and constitute treason to our village. Maybe you should consider moving on and focus more on your training together with Suede-sama, said Ino, expecting to be contradicted by the pink-haired genin, but instead Sakura just kept looking at Naruto and wondering what was in his mind right now. Was that the answer now? Giving up. Truth be told, Sas never bothered asking for help or anything, so why was she so persistent on bringing him back? She didn't know whether or not Naruto gave up on bringing him back. I don't know, Ino, I just don't know what to do. He always was distant to all of us, but as a team we managed to form a little bond between us. I will let the choice fall on Naruto. If he decides to go after him, then I'll go with him. However, if he decides to give up, then our bond is broken and things will never be the same as it once was. I think I'm going home now, guys. I don't have the strength to hear what Naruto has to say yet, said Sakura before moving towards the door. However, as she reached for the doorknob, a certain grumbling startled her, and she turned to see Naruto just waking up and looking at the ones present. Hey, how long have you been here? And why didn't you wake me up? Asked Naruto, eyeing everyone and waiting for a response. It was Shikamaru who explained that since he was sleeping they didn't want to wake you up, and how troublesome would be to do such a thing. Needless to say, Naruto dismissed the issue since it Was pointless to comment further, so how is everyone, asked Naruto, though now the difference was plainly visible to all of them. Naruto's once crystal blue eyes now were like dark blue eyes, in where he always smiled now his face was akin to a bothered person. The group exchanged a few monologues like "I'm fine and all right," to which Naruto nodded and stretched a little bit. Sakura's ear was pounding like crazy since she now would know about what happened with Sas and Naruto. However, she hesitated to come forward with the question, and that was pretty much visible. She secretly appreciated when Ino asked Naruto as to why he didn't want to see anyone right now. After hearing the question, Naruto explained his epiphany to everyone and also explained the book he was reading all night. Along the explanation, the group was stunned and now wondered what triggered him to think like this. When he was about to explain what happened, Shikamaru stopped him, saying that the details of said mission was considered restricted to Gen and Ninja apart from those who participated in the mission, to which Naruto acknowledged and stopped talking. Naruto heard about Sakura being apprenticed to Tsunade and congratulated her. However, everyone saw how Naruto addressed Sakura and all of them wondered where went that crush of the blonde. Sakura, of course, was the first to notice, and that came somehow as a higher shock than Sas deserting the village. Sakura oftentimes found Naruto to be annoying, asking to go out with her, but when he stopped doing it, she now missed it. Well, since Sakura will be training with Taddy, I guess I'm on my own then. Someone of Kakashi-sensei's caliber won't be held up to teach one single genin, no matter, though these books taught me a lot and I can't wait to leave this place and begin training, said Naruto, taking his 3 books and laying them on top of his bed. The group though wondered about Naruto's training, since all of them concurred with him about Kakashi. Little did the group know that said person heard it all inside before turning to Jiraiya. Quite humble of him, wouldn't you say? Kakashi, quit worrying about it. When I'm through with him, he'll be 10 times stronger, trust me on this, said Ja, to which Kakashi nodded and left. After seeing Kakashi leaving, Jiraiya turned to look at Naruto and wondered about a few things. I'm glad Naruto isn't fixed on rescuing the UCHA boy. This way his growth won't be hindered by simply overcoming the UCHA. I guess my sensei days are up. Once again back to Naruto's room, silence ruled the place. Sakura managed to ask Naruto of his intentions towards Zisake, and he eyed Sakura with what seemed to be a sarcastic smile. Naruto thought quite a lot, but he acknowledged the fact that he didn't think of Sas at all, other than the fact that the UCHA tried to kill him. Oh, he didn't need to think about it since the answer was already clear in his mind. However, because of the secrecy towards the mission, he had to hide some aspects of what happened and focus more on Sas's reasons. Sakura, in my opinion, you can't bring back someone who doesn't want to return. Sas left because he thought it would be better for him than staying in the village. Any missions towards rescuing him would turn to failure simply because he doesn't want to return. Nor do I wish to go after him. Some aspects of the mission led me to believe that Sas was a loose cannon just waiting for a little push, so I don't intend to go after him anytime soon unless the Hokage orders me to do so, explained Naruto before seeing Sakura lowering her head to looking towards the ground and left the room. She didn't expect Naruto's explanation to be so unnervingly accurate, and she found no counterargument for him. The rest of the group wished him a good recovery and all of them left. After that, Naruto picked up his last book about ninjutsu and turned to read it. Inside, Naruto saw the 3 academy jutsus and even some advanced ones to use, like Shuriken Kage Bunin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu, and Bunin Dua Clone Explosion Jutsu. Also, he saw a technique called Gershin no Jutsu Torpedo Needle Jutsu and read about the technique. So far, all of these techniques were relatively easy to do, since the first 2 required a technique similar to the Kage Bunyan, and the last one, Naruto just had to mold chakra correctly through a correct set of hand seals. However, the next ones were purely elemental jutsus, and Naruto wouldn't be able to do since he didn't know how. Seeing the rest of the book was divided into elements, Naruto sighed and closed his book. He was going to leave it at the table in front of him when 2 papers fell on his lap. Lifting an eyebrow, Naruto picked them and saw that someone sent him a message. Naruto, I see you notice that apart from some jutsus, this book contains mostly elemental jutsus, so the next paper is a special one. This paper is what we use to determine a ninja's element. Every shinobi has a link to towards a certain element, which means that he or she will be able to perform jutsus towards that element easier than others. As you know or don't know, there are 5 elements: fire, lightning, wind, earth, and water. Therefore, by channeling chakra to this paper, you'll be able to find which element you are best suited with after channeling chakra to the paper will either get soaked water, burn, fire, turns to dust, earth, crumbled, lightning, or split in half, wind. Kakashi, after reading it, Naruto turned to look at the paper and studied for a second. After a moment, he shrugged it off and did just like Kakashi's explanation said. He channeled chakra for a while before he saw the paper splitting in half, indicating that he contained a wind affinity. Wind, it's very rare to have such an affinity, Naruto said. Kakashi, earning the blonde's attention only to see that not only Kakashi was there as well, but also Jiraiya. What do you mean by saying rare? Kakashi-sensei asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya chose to fill in for him. Since we're in fire country, that means the majority of our shinobis possess a fire affinity, which is quite opposite to wind. Other affinities, although less common than fire, are also in abundance in Konoha, like earth and water, with lightning being second last and wind being last, said Jia, to which Kakashi nodded, as well as Naruto. So that means any knowledge towards wind is limited in Konoha, said Naruto, gaining nods from Kakashi and Jiraiya. Truth be told, he didn't need much to work with anyway. His book explained about food and chakra control exercises, so the techniques he could learn from someone with knowledge in the area. Lifting his head once again to face his senses, he wondered why Jiraiya was there in not focusing on his research as he often did. Upon voicing it, Jiraiya snorted at the blonde for his comment, but explained about the training trip. Needless to say, Naruto was surprised upon seeing that he would leave the village for that long, but he wondered why he needed to get out of the village. To which Jiraiya explained that aside from training, Jiraiya would be protecting him from the Akatsuki, thus satisfying the blonde's curiosity. Truth be told, Naruto wanted nothing more than train to correct his flaws, and training under Jiraiya would enable him time to correct them and also learn a lot. Jiraiya explained that they would leave as soon as he was cleared from the hospital, to which Naruto acknowledged it and appreciated the opportunity to train. After the Junin and Sonin left the room, Naruto picked up his book and turned to look at the food and section and how to manifest food and chakra. The next day, Naruto had to say the stuff he saw on the ninjutsu book about food and ninjutsu, and safe to say he was really cursing himself right now. So much information kept hidden from him, and only now did he choose to take a moment of his life to actually read it. Was only after the nurse that checked on him came here to discharge him from the hospital that he took his clothes and left straight to a training ground where he could train and incorporate everything he learned through reading during his stay in the hospital. After all, Naruto didn't want to waste any more time than he already did. He now knew that in order for a shinobi to grow strong, he or she had to have the strength and will to never give up and always fight through numerous obstacles that appear through life. Immediately after arriving in one of Ka's many fields designated specifically for ninjas to train, Naruto went to one of the taijutsu logs on the field and began to beat the hell of it by going through the kates that he learned from the book. Although he knew his form was still far from perfection, he also knew that taijutsu required practice, so it wouldn't be possible for him to just read a book and immediately know how to do it. Nevertheless, he continued to beat the log in hopes of getting it right. After a while, he looked at his dirty hands in a few wounds from beating a log repeatedly and remembered when Lee was fighting Sake right at the beginning of the Chunin exams. Closing his hands once again, forming fists, he looked once again the log and began once again the cat, as this time adding some kicks as well. This time, however, Nar found he was better than before, and he realized that Lee was right. Only through harsh training can the ninja evolve. Stepping away from the log for a bit, Naruto began the cat as on pure air, like he was in a showdown of martial arts. It wasn't as painful, and Naruto could see that the speed of his movements was increasing periodically. It was only after 2 hours that he sit on the ground and looked up. As the sunlight obscured his viewing for an instant, it went without saying that Naruto felt better than ever before. He felt like he already improved a little bit, and now his taijutsu wouldn't be considered street fighting like Kakashi mentioned before. Getting up once more, Naruto changed the subject and went in jutsu. The 3 jutsus he saw in the book were in theory easy to do, but just like taijutsu, one couldn't hope to master something just by reading it in a book. Picking one shuriken, he threw towards the log. Naruto made the hand seals necessary for shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. However, when approximately 4 shuriken should have appeared, only 2 did instead, and none of them had the same properties as the original one. Such a result was expected since Naruto took close to an hour to master the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. This new technique didn't waste as Much chakra the shadow clone, but it did require a considerate amount taking. Another one he tried again only for the same thing to happen, no matter though he would be able to learn it just like he was able to do the cage bunchin. It took him 10 tries to be able to master the technique. In the last one he was able to create close to 10 clones of the shuriken, and all of them pierced the log in multiple locations, thus completing the technique, but not without its price. Though as Naruto felt on the ground from slight fatigue, it didn't matter though. He did it just like he would complete the other two as well. However, his stomach growled, hence why he grabbed some shuin that was stick on the log and went to Ichiraku for some lunch. Of course he changed about the way he saw things, but that doesn't mean his taste for food changed. After sitting down on the bench, Naruto asked for some miso ramen too, which old man Tui greeted him and went to make his bowl. As the noodles were being prepared, Tui asked about Naruto's training with one of the Sonin and congratulated the boy on the opportunity. Naruto appreciated and said that he would be stronger and don't waste more time than he already wasted for petty reasons. Tui was confused at first but waved off, seeing it was Naro, and Naro was impossible to understand. After paying the old man, Naro said to take care since he wouldn't come back for a while, to which Tui smiled and wished the blonde a safe trip. Upon returning to the training ground, Naruto remembered the needed hand seals for the Gershin no Jutsu torpedo needles jutsu, and also the theory behind the technique. According to the book, the ninja must mold his chakra towards creating tons of thin layer shapes and then throwing it at the enemy. Of course, the book made it as easy as a simple henge, but the blonde knew better that chakra manipulation was a chunin level material. Nevertheless, he was committed to doing all three of the techniques before Jiraiya could come to pick him up, so he immediately got to work. Little did he know though that a few people were looking for the missing blonde. At the hospital. Jiraiya, Tsunade and Kakashi were standing in what used to be Naruto's room, only to find it was empty. Naruto's clothes was gone too, except for his orange jacket, which was tossed on the ground near the window, thus showing them the obvious: the boy escaped the hospital and now they have to find him. Tsunade was furious at the head nurse for discharging the blonde, even after she made it clear that only she or Shisen were authorized for such a thing. Well, Gia, I guess you have to find your student out there. You and him are scheduled to leave tomorrow morning, so take your time, said Tsunade before leaving the hospital room, thus leaving Jiraiya and Kakashi inside. Where do you think he is right now? Kakashi asked Jiraiya, actually a little concerned with the blonde since he didn't expect the damn imbecile to run off seconds after being released from the hospital. Kakashi, for his part, was reading his book and didn't pay attention to what the pervert was saying, earning a vin popping from the Sane's forehead, who in turn Sai and Shunin out of the room seconds after Kakashi lowered the book and activated his Sharingan to see if Naruto left a trail of chakra to follow. True to Kakashi's wonder, looking at the window, Kakashi's Sharingan spotted Naruto's chakra as he jumped through the rooftops heading to what appeared like a training ground a couple miles north, smiling at the boy for pumping chakra to his legs and increases his speed. Kakashi started following the path Naro took. He somehow knew that the blonde wouldn't take long before practicing what he learned, and he began to wonder if he should have done this a long time ago. If Naruto was already able to do one of the techniques on the book and settle for the right taijutsu stance, Kakashi would have been wrong about the blonde. Truth be told, the Junin always presumed Naruto would quit being a ninja since he didn't have what it takes. However, as the time passed and Naruto was able to do stuff that no one would think it was possible, learning the 3 steps to the Ranon in little more than a month was outstanding to say the least. The Yandi Hokage took 3 years to create it, and Gia, one of the Sonin, took 4 months to learn. It was amazing that Naruto reduced the timing to only a month. Kakashi remembered seeing it the book he selected for Naruto regarding ninjutsu, and he remembered that apart from the elemental ones, they were 3 jutsus that Kakashi would have wanted to teach Naruto, since it really matched Naruto's unpredictability attacks. Shuriken Cage Bunin no Jutsu, Shuriken Shadow Clone Bunin Dua Clone Explosion Jutsu, and Gershin Torpedo Needle. They were tough to master, but once he manages, he would be able to add 3 very powerful and very handy jutsus to his arsenal, not to mention the food and techniques he would be learning with Jiraiya on his travel. After the last rooftop, Kakashi saw the blonde and also managed to see that he was doing the Tatsu Dragon Seal, which was the last one needed for the Gershin before. Kakashi's eyes widened out of proportions after Naruto finished the hand seal sequence. Tons of chakra needle formed around him before Naruto moved his hands towards the Huji ram seal and shooting the needles forward the log, thus making tons of tiny holes which would kill any enemy easily. Kakashi wondered how much time Naruto was training since the hour of his hospital release was 3 hours ago. Kakashi couldn't figure out how Naruto already learned this jutsu in 3 hours and thought about it for a while. How could someone with no good history at the academy learn advanced jutsu so easily? Would it be because he got the chakra capacity of a Junin no Jia already taught him the water walking exercise, so it couldn't be high chakra capacity? It was another thing definitely. Was Kakashi wondered if Naruto was a genius in disguise, but then again he shouldn't be surprised at yet another surprising feat from Nar after completing the technique. Naruto kneeled on the ground from extreme chakra usage for the day. He cursed not having enough chakra to complete the third technique, but thought again since the bunch in Dua required a lot of chakra at disposal and Naruto now didn't have enough. He figured that some rest would do the trick and his chakra would come back, so he just went to a tree nearby and sit down near it while admiring his work. So far his taijutsu was coming along nicely and he just added 2 new jutsus for him to rely on while fighting the last technique. Though was what Naruto wanted to master the most for the simple reason of using it as a trap, summoning a lot of cage bunions and place some of the exploding ones in the middle so that when the enemy begins hitting them one by one, eventually he would be hitting the exploding one and would be sent flying because of it. Back to Kakashi, he was looking down at Naruto since the blonde happened to pick the same tree he was hiding in order to rest up a bit at. First Kakashi considered just falling to the ground and greeting his student, however for some reason he hesitated. He didn't want to meet those same eyes he saw at the hospital. Kakashi just didn't have the words to talk to him right now. After all, it was him the one who taught Sake that Chidori, who in turn used it to pierce Naruto's flesh, thus almost killing the blonde if the Kabi wasn't inside him. The Junin considered saying he regretted doing what he did, but he had a gut feeling that Naruto would close up once more and say it was all right. With dejected eyes 1 hour later, Naruto got up and felt that his chakra was beginning to fill him up, albeit slowly, so he decided to train more Tatu. So he initiated the katas as he beat up all the imaginary opponents in the air. Meanwhile Kakashi was watching intently and also managing to see some nice punches going on down there before seeing Naruto alternating between punches and kicks. Seeing the blonde training hard sent an unknown wave of pride to Kakashi that never before happened when he trained Sake for a whole month. Not one did the Uchiha cause that to Kakashi, but Naruto in less than a day made Kakashi realized how deeply he messed up with the team. Suddenly someone instantly appeared behind Kakashi, but he knew it wasn't Jia since his visible eye caught sight of green. Good afternoon, my fellow rival. How about we took advantage of this beautiful day and test our abilities to the extreme? Yash screamed Guy before Kakashi placed his hand on Guy's mouth in time for Naruto to just look up since he thought he heard someone screaming. After Kakashi signaled for Guy to be quiet, he looked down and saw that Naruto waved it off and returned to his taijutsu training. A Guy turned to see what his rival was observing, only to smile and give his thumbs up to Kakashi. Oi Kakashi, Naruto sure is filled with the fire of youth. He and student Lee are the same, smiled Guy as he saw Naruto's punches and kicks connect to the log repeatedly. Kakashi for his part thought about teasing the green Junin, but he couldn't fault but agree with his old friend, so unlike any other precedent. Kakashi smiled and nodded. The green beast was astonished with the normal reply and wondered what was wrong with his once hip rival. However, before he could answer, Kakashi filled in the blanks. Naruto has a keen sense of never giving up and he will use that to become stronger. He doesn't need me as his sensei for that, mumbled Kakashi. Guy for his part understood what happened. He heard about what happened from his student Nei and thought about how Unyil Ucha was for trying to kill his teammate with the technique Kakashi taught him. Did he learn that stance all by himself? Kakashi asked Guy, clearly concerned for his rival's supposed lack of teaching skills. However, to his rel, Kakashi nodded his head in the negative and explained that he selected some books for Naruto to read while he was recuperating in the hospital, but Kakashi already knew where his rival wanted to go. I know what you're trying to do, Guy, and I thank you for that, but all I ever did was show him the books to read. He was the one who draw the conclusions, and you can see now how good he is on his own, whispered Kakashi, to which Guy nodded and looked at Naruto once again, who in turn was using both his fists to pound the log mercilessly, and he remembered his Student Lee doing the exact same thing. You know what, Kakashi, I think you should go there and train him. He'll be with Jiraiya for a long time and maybe you can at least help him with one technique. Well, I'm off to run some laps around Konoha, Yash screamed Guy before vanishing and leaving Kakashi alone to watch Naruto. He thought about what Guy said and wondered if really Nar would be resentful to him now wanting to be a sensei to him. It's not that Naruto ever showed resentment at the Junin, so what was he thinking that the blonde would blame him? Sighing in dismay, Kakashi vanished a few meters away so that he could approach the blonde by walking casually. In Tsunade's office. After trying to search for a little while, Gia was called by Tsunade and now both of them began talking. The pervert explained about what he would be training Naruto in and how he would be power up his spirit and resolve enough to combat the Kabi within his stomach. Tsunade nodded but still was reluctant to let the blonde go. She didn't see the need to leave the village for training all that much, but Jiraiya was insistent, saying that the Akatsuki would come for him when he's vulnerable, hence why they need to stay on constant move. Tsunade also expressed her concerns about the blonde being too far behind his peers in terms of rank and that maybe he could go after the next Chunin exam. Tsunade, that kid has potential to come back as Junin level. You know that with his chakra potential and a few powerful techniques, there is no way he wouldn't be able to do the Chunin exams once we come back. He is already fixing some minor issues that need to be fixed. It's just a matter of time until we'll begin elemental manipulation. I can tell you for sure that he is going to become as good as his father was, if not better. He learned the Renin in only a month. That's got to be saying something, explained Jiraiya to which Tsunade s and zip some tea. Okay, he can go, but if I hear that you neglected him training for doing perverted activities, I'll make sure to beat you all the way to Iowa. Do you understand? Threatened Tsunade, earning a not a gulp from the pervert. Now you're not going to search for him? Asked the Hokage, looking at some scrolls before seeing the pervert shrugging his shoulders, saying that when the blonde was ready he would appear to him, earning a nod from Tsunade. With Naruto back with Naruto. He was just finishing beating the log mercilessly when he heard steps coming his way. He didn't want it to be Jiraiya since he wanted to finish the 3 techniques before leaving, but it was already night time and still one was left. The sound of the steps was increasing until the figure finally revealed himself as Kakashi, smiling. Hey Naruto, what are you up to? Asked the silver-haired Junin. Naruto, for his part, smiled at seeing the man and said that he was practicing the taijutsu and 3 jutsus he learned from the book. The moon was already up the sky and Kakashi was just watching Naruto pummel the log once more until he came to a halt and looked to his bead hands. He already had the chakra necessary to attempt the last jutsu, so he stopped and summoned one shadow clone before Kakashi stopped him. Naruto, I think I know what technique you're trying to do, but with the clone so close you could get caught in the explosion. Send him a couple steps further and pump as much chakra as you can in one go. That's the secret of the Dua T. Kakashi, to which Naruto nodded and looked as the clone began walking a few steps before stopping and looking to the real one, who in turn focused on the ram seal and immediately molded as much chakra as possible in one go. The clone was suddenly enveloped in a big explosion, thus completing the technique. Of course, Naruto's explosion wasn't as big as Itachi was, but it would certainly cause damage to the enemy. Kakashi smiled upon seeing that Naruto already managed to master 2 of the jutsus that he set for the blonde, not to mention that the Genin Taijutsu was now up to low Chunin level. Looking back at Naruto, Kakashi saw that he was smiling, but the smile was different. This smile was a satisfied one that someone wears it upon being able to overcome an obstacle after failing a few times before. Upon asking, though, Naruto said that for a long time he thought he was doing fine as a shinobi, but now he saw that he was just being delusional about his abilities. Listen, Naruto, seeing is you'll be gone for a long time, how about I buy you some ramen? Invited Kakashi, earning a nod from Naruto. Some minutes later, teacher and student each took a sit at the ramen stand and placed their respective orders as they waited. Kakashi asked about how it was to travel and train with the Sannin. Naruto thought about it for a while, but in the end he didn't have much to say other than the fact that the man would only teach him one time and leave him to practice. Naruto told him about the 3 stages of the Renan and how it was initially weird to practice with water balloons and rubber balls. I just hope that this time he won't be focusing so much on peeping at girls all the time. complained Naruto, to which Kakashi smiled and nodded before seeing their orders being placed in front of them. They ate the meal quietly while savoring the delicious noodles for a while. No one talked, no one opened their mouth to speak, only to eat when that was finished. Kakashi extended his dish so that the old man and Yuki could pick up before turning and addressing Naruto. I'd like to say I'm sorry to you, said Kakashi, coming forward with the subject, earning a much surprised look from his student, who in turn asked about what he was sorry about. Ever since Team 7 was formed, I didn't give the proper attention I should have done to the Team U, especially at the Chunin exams. I ended up training someone who didn't need help and left you under the care of Ebitu at the hospital. When you asked me about your flaws, I felt ashamed simply because as your Junin sensei I shouldn't be the one listing them but rather working with you towards correcting them. I know that I wasn't the best sensei, and for that I seriously apologize, whispered Kakashi that last part before Naruto began looking at his sensei, wondering what this all about. Was this guilt for the UCH doing what he did? Naruto didn't forget that Sake tried to kill him with the technique Kakashi taught him, so it was really guilt over what he did, and Kakashi felt responsible for what happened. Sensei, you don't need to apologize, no one could have known that Sass would eventually flee for power. Also about my so-called flaws, what good is the sensei when the student doesn't understand what needs to be done? Those books you picked up for me helped understand what needed to be changed in my abilities, and for that I thank you. Now not only I improved my Tatu but also just added 3 jutsus to use out there thanks to you, once more explained Naruto, but Kakashi was still looking down when suddenly he remembered hearing Naruto saying that he added 3 jutsus. You were able to master the 3 jutsus? Asked Kakashi incredulously before Naruto nodded and finished up the last string of noodles. How many can you multiple the shans? Asked Kakashi once again. I managed 10 clones the last time, though with more chakra the numbers can double, explained Naruto, earning a nod from Kakashi and a thought that maybe Naruto was a genius in hiding. Furthermore, Kakashi asked some more questions about the techniques and the taijutsu, to which Naruto responded before the blonde said his goodbyes, since he was supposed to be packing his things for the trip tomorrow. Kakashi eyed the blonde leaving and wondered how much better Naruto would be if Kakashi found out earlier about the blonde's quick learning. When he turned to walk away, he stopped for a while before addressing the shadow to simply come out and talk to him. Akashi, I didn't want to intrude in student-teacher conversation, but Tsunade-sama wants to talk to you immediately, said the shadow before leaving. Once Kakashi arrived, Tsunade asked about Naruto's whereabouts. Kakashi said that he went to his apartment after training the whole day. According to Kakashi, Naruto managed to improve his ta jutsu form, and also the 3 jutsus that the book contained aside from the elemental ones. Jiraiya was there as well, so you could imagine his surprise upon seeing that the blonde was also training ninjutsu. After hearing Kakashi's statement, Sun nodded and took a scroll next to her. Kakashi, tomorrow you'll part along with Genma and Ria to a mission near Sua. The case Cage asked for help in pursuing a missing nin who managed to infiltrate the village, kill some of their ninjas, and steal some important documents. Sabaku Notary will be joining your group to arrest the man and retrieve the documents. Be ready to leave at 10 a.m. tomorrow, ordered Tsunade, earning a nod from Kakashi before vanishing. Inside Nar's place. After already packing everything that he needed for the trip plus some extra money to purchase some new clothing, Naruto was now just taking one last look at his place before going to sleep. As to his clothes, he remembered some people saying ill about his clothes choice because they didn't offer him the necessary stealth that a ninja must have, so Naruto made a mental note that the second he spots a place that sells ninja clothing, he would enter the place and change everything. Upon lying on the bed, Naruto noticed the kai he leaves right next to him in case someone decides to break in, and remembered that one last exercise was a do the chakra control exercise was something he despised entirely. The tree walking one was easily the most unnerving one he ever had to do. After all, who in their sand consciousness would want to fall on their head so many times? Of course, Naruto didn't need to fall on his head simply because upon failing he could simply flip his body and fall safely on his feet. The water walking one was also a pain in the ass. Naruto remembered that he kept falling on that hot water so many times he didn't know he was wet from the water or he was sweating from the heat. Now this third one could shape to be just as troublesome as the 2 other, if not more. Maybe Naruto would use more chakra and send the kunai flying directly at him. Just as he took the kunai, he thought better and returned it to the proper place. His chakra system took a heavy blow today and he wanted nothing more than simply sleep for a while. It wasn't long until his mind started playing tricks on him, which meant that just like every night he fell asleep, he was having a nightmare. Usually it was just memories of people looking at him with disdain and anger, nothing that he couldn't handle in time, thus didn't bother his Rahul Sharma. Sleep, however, this one was different, or at least started out differently. He was inside a dark room where inside he couldn't say a thing except for a bed that was illuminated. As he walked closer, he noticed that a boy closer to his age was there, sleeping with his face looking up. Upon approaching, the person's identity was plainly visible to Naruto. The cursed seal on his neck was glowing with intensity, but instead of reaching Sasuke to see if he was all right, Naruto just stood there impassively. Suddenly Orochimaru appeared next to Sasuke and extended two white snakes around Sasuke's body, slowly taking possession of his body. Orochimaru stopped for a while and watched Naruto to see if he would do something to stop the snake face, but Naruto just remained there stoically watching as Orochimaru managed to complete his possession of the Sharingan before transforming into a monster and began his havoc in mayhem. Suddenly in front of Naruto appeared Sasuke, once again looking at him, demanding answers about why Naruto let Orochimaru take over his body. The answer, though, was an easy one to make. Clearly you didn't expect me to help you out after you tried to kill me, didn't you, traitor? Asked Naruto before seeing Sasuke's spirit leaving while looking at the blonde's eyes without uttering a single word in response. After Sas was gone, Naruto turned to look at Orochimaru, who in turn was looking at him while laughing evilly before preparing a Renin in his right hand and charged Orochimaru before slamming the Rengan right between his eyes. The next scene was Naruto's room. As he opened his eyes to administer what he just pictured inside his mind, he just saw Orochimaru completing his ambition before Naruto was able to land a Renin between his eyes. What the dream mean? Of course Naruto didn't care much for Sasuke, but he wouldn't let Orochimaru do what he intends to do simply because he is an enemy of the village and therefore cannot let him live. So maybe the dream was what the future could entail in case Orochimaru manages to take possession of Sasuke's Sharingan. Closing his eyes once more, he fell asleep with those thoughts in mind, in only one conclusion: he would protect the village, even if it costs his life to end. Do so. Day of departure. After saying goodbye to his friends, he and Gia marched together towards the main gate, therefore beginning their adventure across the elemental countries. After the last step, Naruto stopped and turned to look at the Hok monument, especially at the fourth Hokage's head. I'll come back stronger and protect the village just like you did with your life. That's a promise, screamed Naruto to no one until Ja screamed for him to hurry up or else he would leave without him. A few hours after leaving the village, Jiraiya and Naruto were found walking casually towards a small village in order to have some lunch and talk for a while. Suffice to say, Jiraiya wanted to talk with Naruto, not only because he wanted to create a suitable schedule for the blonde's training, but also in order to find out as much as possible about the eternal enigma that was Uzumaki Naruto. In their last trip, Jiraiya was practically begging for Naruto to stop screaming from time to time, but now the blonde didn't matter a single word since they left Konoha. Naruto for his part chose the quiet time and began to wonder about things a little bit. He often wondered about his life and how it could turn up if he had the decency to apply himself on being a better ninja. Of course he felt stronger and more capable now, but Naruto couldn't help but think about what would happen if he was better trained. Surely he would do better in missions and maybe overcome the UCHA in battle. Because of it, Naruto was not stupid enough to realize that he just learned 3 advanced jutsus in only a day, therefore it was safe to say he could be already proficient in food and in jutsu by now. I surely messed up with my training. No matter though, I'll have 3 years to make up for the last time and hopefully become strong enough to be of aid to the village, thought Naruto as he looked up only to see that they were approaching a small village. Naruto, why don't we stop here for some lunch? I bet you're hungry, offered Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who appreciated the offer and said that his feet was already hurting from that much walk. Jiraiya couldn't help but laugh upon eyeing his new student determination. Another aspect of Jia's concern was towards Naruto maybe becoming respectful for a change. He did insist for the blonde to address him with respect, however a part of him wanted to be called Ero Sinan. A few moments later, Naruto and Jiraiya were having some sushi and Jiraiya chose that moment to talk to the blonde. Oi Naruto, as you know we'll have 3 years to spend on your training and I expect that in the end of this 3 years your level would be somewhat close to Junin, said Jiraiya, earning a look in surprise from Naruto, who thought he heard that Jiraiya wanted him to be close to Kakashi's level upon returning. That's right kid, you are already close to Chunin material, and as I remembered carefully you did beat that Nate kid who was considered the genius of the Hyuga clan and you saved Konoha from the one-tailed beast Shukaku. Now stop interrupting me and let's get down to business, stated Jiraiya, to which Naruto rolled his eyes away. Before eyeing the pervert once more, based on the material I've gathered on your file, your tattoo is now after you left the hospital more refined, so it is considered low-level Chunin. However, we'll sure improve this area Genjutsu. I'm sorry to say your ability is practically none. However, I'm sure that learning Genjutsu wouldn't suit your fighting style, so we'll focus on learning to interpret the illusion and how to dispel them effectively. Chakra control won't be much of an issue here in our training since you already completed the tree and water walking, explained Jiraiya, but Naruto stopped him for a second. What about the K lifting exercise? I saw that this is the third level of chakra control, asked Naruto, earning a thinking pose from Jiraiya. The Kai lifting exercise, although completely useful, wasn't obligatory for a ninja to complete. This exercise was only completed by those of the Hyuga clan in order to learn the Jukin, and for medical ninja to be able to learn their techniques, this exercise required a steady flow of chakra to be expelled from the ninja's hands, thus keeping the Kai hovering around. Although it's nice to be able to, Naruto, truth is it isn't a necessary skill to have, especially for someone more suited for tattoo and ninjutsu such as yourself. If you truly wish to learn, we'll leave it for the end of our training. Also, if you wish, you could attempt on one of our free times. Moving on, ninjutsu and chakra capacity, the leather is rather easy to train, since you only need to use a lot of chakra and then wait for your reserves to be fulfilled again. Now ninjutsu, said Jiraiya before seeing Naruto's smile, which in turn caused him to smile in return. As you know, ninjutsu are mostly divided between shape and element manipulation, with a few exceptions that doesn't rely on them. You already is proficient in shape manipulation from the Renan and the Gershin no Jutsu torpedo needles jutsu. However, we are still due to perfect your Renan. Also, we'll be focusing on your food and element. I happen to know the formula necessary to be able to use food and chakra, and also some techniques that will be easy to teach. I happen to have a friend in Suna that happens to be a Junin. He will teach you 2 to 3 advanced food and techniques, but the rest will be up to you, explained Jiraiya. Also, it will be up to you to figure out our schedule. You'll have to come up with a suitable timetable that will incorporate all of the subjects we talked so far. After hearing that, Naruto was rather angry, to say the least. Jiraiya was supposed to be the teacher, and yet he was stuck with fixing the training schedule. It was ridiculous. Jiraiya explained that such abilities are vital in the ninja world and would help Naruto greatly while going on more advanced missions or even leading a team. After paying for the meal, Jiraiya left Naruto at the local library in order to think of the schedule while he would do some researching. Naruto didn't complain, but he knew of the damn pervert's reasons for leaving and wondered if the damn pervert would do this more often in the future. Looking at the blank page for a moment, Naruto decided to settle down everything he needed to place at the schedule and listed down. After finishing it, he proceeded to think the old Naruto would settle for 3 whole years of badass ninjutsu and cool moves, but now after what he saw in those books, the blondie realized that he needed to pay attention to his other skills. 3 years and 3 abilities to focus on taijutsu, jutsu and ninjutsu. Also, ninjutsu would be divided into 3 phases, using the Renin with one hand, learning food and chakra, and learning food and techniques. Taijutsu and genjutsu didn't need a full year. Naruto wondered. Of course, he could learn more advanced stances in probably 6 months and then do some occasional spars with Jiraiya. Also, Janjutsu disrupting wouldn't require much time to learn, so maybe he could assert both taijutsu and genjutsu within a full year of training. Well, I guess we could focus on these 2 arts as well as doing some chakra control exercises, thought Naruto as he began scribbling on the paper the following first year 6 months of taijutsu and chakra control exercises, extended period of running on top of water, and maybe even doing occasional spars to increase the pace. Naruto really wanted to learn some nun and jutsu, but then the ones he already knew could need some time mastering it. The shuriken cage Bunshin no Jutsu Shuriken Shadow Clone was one of them, and Naruto always wanted to see a suitable number of shuriken clones to be created for the technique to be effective. Also, the Guai Shin no Jutsu Torpedo Needles Jutsu could need some work refining its shape and also increasing the number of needles so he could use the first year perfecting them on his spare time from training the bunch in Dua Clone Explosion only. Needed more chakra bursts, and Naruto didn't need to train that scribbling. This information Naruto now initiated the second schedule, since he would have practically done with Tatu and Jutsu he could focus 2 years with ninjutsu. Sometime in the past he heard someone telling that he was an Inju type of ninja because of his unlimited chakra capacity, so with the proper control and the advanced techniques he was sure to learn. Naruto was practically drooling in anticipation. Nevertheless, he needed before learning any other jutsu to use the Ranon in one hand, so he settled for 3 months exclusively for the Rengen. After that, Jiraiya would be teaching him how to have access to food and chakra. However, Naruto was clueless as to how much time it would be required to do this. The part of the book didn't say much about it, so he settled for taking the rest of the year for such a feat. After all, in case he manages to learn before the end of the second year, maybe he could focus on other abilities. Looking at the paper, he turned to scribble once more. Second year 3. First month's recent gone training in order to be able to create it single-handedly without the clones assistance, and N 9 months of food and chakra manifestation training. In case I manage to do it in lesser time, we can focus on learning 1 or 2 food and techniques and spar on top of the water using both Tatu and ninjutsu. Objective: fighting experience and mastery of jutsus in the heat of battle. Of course, the third year would be focused on food and techniques that Naruto would be learning from both and a man in Suna. So he scribbled the last year and turned to read it once more in order to see if he didn't miss anything. Naruto was actually satisfied with his schedule. Truth be told, the schedule was a good idea, since it would keep not only him in place but also for his perverted sensei leaving the paper on top of the table. For a moment Nar began to look around a bit. This wasn't a shinobi library, hence why he couldn't pick anything that would interest him. However, they did have some adventure books to read, and Naruto knew he would have to wait a while for Jiraiya to arrive. Upon arriving at the respective section, he glanced at the titles and was surprised to see that some of the books involve the shinobi world. Even if all of them are fiction, he took a few, ranging from Kiri Shinobi's war against pirates to an adventure between 2 powerful warriors in Iowa battling for the sushi cage position. After picking them, he went to the table he was seating earlier and placed the books on top of the table, picking the first book, which was actually the one that described Kiri's war against the pirate organization. He opened and started reading with Jiraiya . After leaving Naruto alone at the library, Jiraiya decided to run into an old friend of his that happened to leave at the village. Actually, the reason Ja stopped by was because this man contacted him a while ago because of some sensitive information about Suna. Jiraiya had informants up there but couldn't just dismiss information like that, especially because this man wasn't limited to sensitive information and could easily tell more. After a while of walking, he reached a normal 2-story white house and knocked on the door. It took some minutes before the door opened, although just a little for the man inside to see who was knocking. You appear like him, but how do I know you're really him? Asked the shadow, earning a snort from the perv. Really, must every informant of his ask that question? True, it was shinobi protocol to be certain of the one in front of him before opening his mouth. Before one became his informant, Jiraiya would say a secret password that only he could know. Orochimaru is a pedophile, muttered Jiraiya, earning a nod from the man before he fully opened and greeted the white-haired Sonin. Clearly Orochimaru has been given many names and curses, but only Jiraiya would call him like that. Seriously, I'd think I earned your trust enough so that you shouldn't feel the need to have a double check, said Jiraiya, earning a snicker from the man. Well, one couldn't help but keep a few vices. Besides, it's better to be assured than be stabbed in the back. Come in, gestured the man, to which Ja muttered something unulin. Then entered the house. The inner walls were rather simple, but what could anyone expect from a ninja's retirement home? Nikado Shinji was really an ordinary shinobi, retiring early because of losing one of his arms while on a mission. He decided to leave the village and settle down in a village where he wouldn't hear the word ninja. However, just as the man said, Shinji became addicted to some of the vices that were exclusive for Shishabi, hence why he agreed to be Jia's informant. So I believe you have something to tell me, so let's hear it. said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Shinji, who began, I have news of Suna. Apparently they took Orochimaru's betrayal pretty heavily and are now restructuring everything I heard from Ana Ninja that they have plans of formulating a mutual agreement with Konoha in order to exchange knowledge. Regarding Gen and training in the Academy of Shinobi Wannabes also there is a rumor of a nomination for the God I'm Kage, although he couldn't confirm me the nominee's identity, explained Shinji, earning a nod in appreciation from the Sonin although it wasn't urgent news. Jiraiya was famous for knowing pretty much everything about everything. He knew of Suna's growing interest in allying once again with Konoha for the famous mutual benefits. The news of the new case Kage though was unexpected, since because of the Yandi Saw's Kage's death the council took over everything until a next suitable shinobi becomes nominated for the Godai case. Kage Jiraiya thanked the man for the information and gladly accepted some tea that Shinji just now made. Some occasional talk was exchanged between the two, and when Jiraiya looked at the time he realized he abandoned Naruto at the library for close to 3 hours now. He explained to Shinji that he was in a hurry to meet someone and appreciated the hospitality. After leaving the house he took a few minutes to arrive at the library, already wondering how much of a headache he will have from hearing Naruto screaming at him for abandonment. What he never expected though was to see Naruto, instead of either falling asleep or bitching to someone about late senses, the blonde was there seated at a table reading a book. And Jiraiya could see 3 other books on top of the table as well. I don't know if I should be relieved that he won't scream at me or worried of seeing Uzumaki Naruto, the most hyperactive ninja of Konoha and Geeki of the Kabi no Yoko, expending pretty much half a day at the library, thought Jiraiya as he took the paper and turned to read it. First year 6 months of taijutsu and chakra control exercises, extended periods of running on top of water, and maybe even doing occasional spars to increase the pace. Master of 2N justice learned before leaving, which are the following: Shuriken, Kage Bunin no Jutsu, and Wai Shin no Jutsu. And the rest of the year will be spent on Gen Jutsu understanding plus how to disrupt the illusion. Second year 3 first months Rengen training in order to be able to create it single-handedly without the clones assistance, and 9 months of food and chakra manifestation training in case I manage to do it in lesser time. We can focus on learning 1-2 food and techniques and spar on top of the water using both taijutsu and ninjutsu. Objective: fighting experience and mastery of jutsus in the heat of battle. Third year mainly food and ninjutsu training with Jiraiya and a ninja from Suna, followed by full-out spar involving nintai and gen jutsu 3 times a week until the last 2 months, which will be used for eventual exercises that I couldn't master in time. Jiraiya couldn't help but smile upon reading it. There were some points missing, however he was still due to tell Naruto that on time he would be set up against other opponents in order to have some battle experience. Still, the schedule layout worked fine, and Jiraiya found that the time given for all of them were spot on. Naruto for his part finished his book and looked at the pervert, displaying a large smile on his face. I suppose that since you're smiling is because you approved my schedule, asked Naruto before earning a nod from his now sensei. Indeed. I first thought you'd put 3 whole years of ninjutsu, but then I guess you are now a changed shinobi. The schedule is great and we can begin right away since the sun is still up. We'll use it to test your skills. So far we'll find a clearance for us to have a spar so I can gauge what you need correcting. Lead go, said Jiraiya, to which Naruto nodded before getting off the chair and follow in the pervert. It was only when they left the library that Naruto remembered something. What took you so long, Aro-sensei, asked Naruto, earning a sigh in dismay from the change in names. Well, at least he placed the word sensei in it. I went to find a friend of mine who contacted me for some information, stated Jiraiya. Equals a few miles away from the village. Once out of the village, Jiraiya and Naruto found a clearing before they sealed their belongings inside a scroll by Jiraiya. After all, it wouldn't do well for them to leave it next to a tree and have it stolen in the midst of a fight. All right, Naruto, come at me with everything you got, but mind you, I'm not just standing here waiting for the attack, so be prepared, said Gia before already beginning a set of hand seals before whispering Sweden SWE and no jutsu. Water release, water dragon jutsu. Instantly from a lagoon nearby, the dragon suddenly emerged and attacked Naruto, who was frightened to death. Upon hearing the dragon roaring, the blonde realized though that he had to face the danger and used some chakra to jump at the last minute, thus evading the technique. He charged Jiraiya once again. Adding chakra to his feet for an upgrade in speed before reaching and aiming the man's chest, Jiraiya used his hand to blow. Blocked Naruto's kick and used the other arm to punch the blonde's ribs but barely missed since Naruto bended his body. A little bit after falling, Naruto did some back flips and jumped a little higher before taking some shans and throwing at Jiraiya before making hand seals for Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. Shuriken Shadow Clone Jiraiya was impressed upon seeing the 4 shans become 40 and made some hand seals of his own Dune Door AI Earth Release Mud Wall Jutsu. Still in the air, Naruto saw the wall being formed and saw all the Shuin being blocked before cursing at the man's elemental jutsus charging once again. Naruto went up the earth wall using chakra since he couldn't see where Jiraiya was inside the protection. Jiraiya smiled at the blonde's insight. The earth wall technique had a weakness of blocking the user's sight, thus Jiraiya could see the blonde but he heard the sound of steps, so he just connected the dots. Looking up, he saw as Naruto jumped the wall and made some hand seals before chakra spikes appeared around him with Naruto's shift of seals. The needles charged forward and pierced Jiraiya like a pin cushion. Naruto actually believed he accidentally killed the pervert when he saw a said man to his right aiming a kick at his side stomach, thus sending the blonde flying. Using the momentum, Naruto made a spin and landed safely on the ground before he eyed Jiraiya for a while. The pervert, for his part, jumped and landed right in front of Naruto while looking at him. Very good, Naruto, your ninjutsu was surely flawless, although in the midst of battle you'd need to increase the speed in which you make the hand seals, however that will come with experience. Your tattoo, although good, needs some correction in terms of defensive CTIS. At some point there you left your guard open and that is unacceptable overall, though you did pretty good, said Jiraiya, earning a thanks in appreciation from the blonde after a while. The two were already marching towards the next village in order to get some sleep on the way, though Naruto was picturing his fight and smiled. Of course, Jiraiya was fighting with at least 5% of his abilities, but that was considered high Jonin level, so if Naruto was on pair with the Sonin using 5%, then perhaps Jiraiya was right about him being low Chunin level. Still, Naruto couldn't help but remember the pervert using both Suiden and Doden and wondered about each ninja's affinity. Aos sensei, how come you were able to use more than one element? I thought each ninja had one affinity, asked Naruto, earning a smile from Jiraiya. It's true that the majority of ninja has only one affinity, however there are exceptions out there that have two, however that does not mean you couldn't learn jutsus from other elements. The tricky part is that would be more difficult and more chakra demanding than the element you're aligned with. For example, I have a Dune affinity, but I also can use Suiden Kaden and a couple food and techniques, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod in surprise from Naruto. However, since your schedule is done, we'll focus on tattoo and genjutsu this year, plus some occasional spars with either myself or others. As Jiraiya talked, Naruto looked at him explaining and felt something different from the pervert. It certainly was different from the Jia he traveled to find. Tsunade, speaking the truth, Jiraiya was feeling rather nostalgic about teaching another blonde in the past, and he couldn't help but look at the sky and speak to the clouds to his deceased student Minato. Naruto, truly is your son equals Tanzaku guy equals. After another hour of casual travel, Naruto and Jiraiya arrived at Tanzaku Guai before quickly renting a room for 2 days. On the way, Jia explained that they wouldn't be more than a week in one place even if nobody would be around to see them. The reason behind this was to avoid unwanted attention and alerting Akatsuki of their presence. After all, one of the objectives of this training period is to avoid bumping into one of their members while on a random mission. After that, Jiraiya said for Naruto that he would be meeting another friend before giving his giddy smile, showing to the blonde that he would be peeping around the place for a while. Sighing in dismay, Naruto said that he would wander around town for a while and maybe have some dinner. Jiraiya wondered for a moment before shrugging it off and left the hotel as well. Since Naruto left his H8 inside the room, there wasn't much worry in him walking around for a while after all. Simply waiting inside the room wouldn't please anyone. The sun was just setting and the village nights were beginning to appear. In minutes, the entire village was surrounded by festival lights, since the whole city was one. Millions of merchants would come here with the opportunity of selling their products to the population. As Naruto wandered around, he could see many little stores going from restaurants to shinobi games. However, Naruto was actually looking for a place that sells ninja clothing, however that could wait. After all, his stomach pretty much begged him to have something to eat, so he went to a ramen stand and asked for 3 bowls of miso ramen. While nothing compared to Ichiraku's, this one was rather good. Nar thought he appreciated the food and then paid for it before leaving, and searching around town for a while. It wouldn't be possible for this village not to have a shinobi store. However, Naruto was wandering for a while and was practically giving up the search and returned to the hotel when he spotted what he was looking for. Once inside, Naruto blinked several times and then blinked once more. The store was huge in every sense of the way. The reason for Naruto's surprise was that it didn't look his bid from the outside. Looking around, he saw a bunch of cool stuff like weapons, sealing scrolls, survival kits, everything a ninja wanted he could get in here. Eventually he found the clothes section and quickly began to look at the samples. He was searching for something neutral, although more for the dark side. Obviously he would get some dark paints and maybe something with a few pockets for him to store. Once the pants were chosen, Nar went for the shirts. He remembered thinking about buying neutral colors like gray or even a much darker shade of the color. Searching for a while, he found what he was searching for, a dark gray shirt with no drawings or engravings of any kind, being perfect for his idea. Upon selecting other dark colors such as dark green and a brown one, he went to the counter and asked for 3 pairs of the paints. He selected and if possible engraved the shirts with the whirlpool symbol on his back, although now instead of orange or red. I don't remember. Naruto wanted it all black. The attendant smiled at him and told him to wait while she would go to the back and start with the order. Meanwhile, Naruto decided to take a look at the swords weapons. He wasn't look forward to studying kenjutsu anytime soon, but the swords in display were nothing short of amazing. There were some of them who had engravings added to the hilt, and Naruto's creative mind was already picturing his engraved with the whirlpool symbol. For some reason though, Naruto felt attached to that symbol, although it wasn't Konoha symbol per se. After a while the woman arrived with Naruto's orders and gave him the price for the whole thing. Grabbing the money he separated, he turned to look at some gloves that happened to possess metallic knuckles. Needless to say, he bought them as well. After appreciating for the service, Naruto left the shop towards the hotel. The next day. After doing his routine, Naruto was already outside the village wandering around for Jiraiya, who in turn was still due to show his face. Looking around, Nar suddenly was feeling a little bit unnerved by so many people staring at him. The stare itself didn't bother him since he was used to it back at his home village. The problem now was that the people who stared at him were composed of only women and girls, and the look of their face was similar to the looks that the damn traitor received back in Konoha. Suddenly it clicked on him. Naruto decided to wear his new clothes today, and while he thought he looked good on the mirror, he clearly didn't expect to attract this sort of attention. Wandering around some more until he saw the Sunny sitting on the ground near what seemed to be an abandoned house. Inside, in dismay, damn, we're only started this trip and the damn pervert already passed out drunk, thought Naruto as he approached Jiraiya for a while. Oh, the ideas he had for a good prank. Naruto's prankster side often times took over his will, summoning close to 10 cage bunions. All of them gathered air in their lungs before screaming, "Wake up, Arrow Sensei!" G jumped nearly in instinct, and when he noticed where he was, he could already see the entire village under him before he fell at the same place he was before. Scratching his head for a while, Jiraiya looked around. While feeling his head pounding like crazy, it wasn't enough for him to feel a hangover. Now Naruto screaming at his ear would forever plague his mind as the worst headache ever. As he opened his eyes, his vision was somewhat blurry and he was seeing a blurry vision of a blonde in black paints and gray shirt looking at him. Wow, I must be seeing things. I swear I just saw Minato looking at me with those same angry eyes. Damn you, Naruto, you look so much like your parents. It's kind of scary. Oi, why the hell did you do that for, brat? I was trying to sleep here, shouted Jiraiya, to which Naruto rolled his eyes and looked at the messed state of the man in front of him. You are the one to blame for this, Arrow Sensei. You ask for respect and yet you sit in the middle of the street completely drunk, muttered Naruto, earning a snore in complaint, but Jiraiya stopped the discussion from fear of his head exploding. I really need to stop drinking so much, thought Gia as he walked towards a bakery and asked for some bread and water to ease the headache. After that, he looked at the blonde and now realized that his clothes were different now. Interesting choice in clothes you got there, Naruto. It fits you, actually, said Jiraiya, actually meaning that he was glad that he didn't have to force the blonde to lose the orange clothing. Upon looking at the back of the shirt, Jiraiya was surprised to see a Black whirlpool symbol attached to the fabric instead of the usual one that is located behind his orange jacket also. Now we can train your stealth abilities since we don't have to worry about you being discovered in the middle of the forest because of your orange clothing. What did you do with it anyway? Asked Jiraiya, to which Naruto answered that he simply threw it away and then turned his back to Jiraiya, not really wanting to deal with Jiraiya in this stage right now. Jiraiya for his part rose from the ground and looked at the blonde in front of him. Aos sensei, since you'll be recovering in the hotel, can I go train a little bit? Asked Naruto, earning a surprised look from Jiraiya, who in turn wondered why the sudden rush in getting stronger. Naruto, we have 3 years ahead of us. To do that we should consider resting a bit, said Jiraiya, but stopped when Naruto turned his head and looked at Jiraiya with eyes that astonished the Sonic. Jiraiya could see the pure eye of determination, eye of devotion towards an objective, whatever it was. I have to become stronger in order to protect Konoha, and for that resting will come last, stated Naruto, earning a sigh in Maye from Jiraiya, who was imagining 3 years of constant movement and training regimes. Jiraiya woke from his wonderings when he saw Nar began walking away from him before he called for him to halt and wanted to talk to him. Naruto stopped and looked at Jiraiya, who stopped running and landed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto, I know you want to protect the village and those you care for, and believe me when I say you'll become a great shinobi. I'll be recovering a bit at Thiel Tell, but I'll set you up with a couple of stamina exercises mixed with taijutsu practice. That will put you up to test. Extend your arms for me if you may, said Jiraiya. Before Naruto did as instructed, focusing some chra on his fingers, Jiraiya began to draw 2 seals, one in each of Naruto's arms, before closing his eyes and focusing on activating it, ready to go. These seals are called restriction seals, and what they do is make it heavier for you to move at will. For the remaining of the month you will become adjusted to it as we practice these stamina exercises. Now a complete lap around Tanzaku guide takes about half an hour. Mostly, so begin with 5 laps around the village, then practice your taijutsu until I arrive. Understood, explained Jiraiya before Naruto nodded eagerly to begin before running towards the village exit. Ever he found out how the seal operated, and it was tough to say the least, but he went nonetheless, and Jiraiya smirked at the sight of Minato's training. Wait, no, this is Naruto, not his father. I got to sleep a little bit and definitely cannot call him Minato. Oh my friend, your son looks so much like you. It's really scary sometimes. Back to Naruto, he was already on his way towards the fifth lap around the village. While wondering about the effects of the seal located in both his arms, he could already imagine how much these exercises could improve not only his body mass but also the strength behind his taijutsu attacks. Not only that, but while adjusting to the restriction of the seal, Naruto could also improve his speed arrows. Sensei is a genius. It had been 2 weeks since that day Naruto was introduced to the restriction seals, and his physical skills greatly improved. He and Jiraiya was found heading towards river country in hopes of training below a waterfall. Jiraiya instructed Naruto that learning how to meditate can increase the ninja's perception of things both outside and inside his body. For instance, by meditating, Naruto could have more access to his chakra and learn how to ease his chakra flow inside his chakra coils. Back to Naruto's physical skills. He was able to gain some muscles from constantly using them to be able to move. Nar learned by pure experience how the restriction seal worked. As Naruto walked, the air would reach the seal and it would increase the air force around the blonde's body, thus making it harder to move his limbs. At the time, Naruto compared it like trying to move in the water, which Jia couldn't agree more to. The restriction seal was created by the Yandi Hokage in response to the gravity seal that was called Kinjutsu because of the damage it did to the human body. This new one acted more directly towards a ninja's training, and unlike the gravity seal, it didn't overstrain the muscles and organs. Some minutes later, the two of them saw the many number of waterfalls that made river country famous. Naruto, there are a lot of inns here in river country, so we'll just settle in and proceed with what I intended for you, said Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who in turn extended his hand before focusing chakra on rotation. The energy began to gather around his hand but dissipated seconds afterwards, even if the Renan training was only due to happen the next year. Naruto decided to give it a shot. While on their travels around the elemental nations, Jia saw it and smiled at the blonde's better attempt this time since he began to try the Renan single-handedly. Naruto has improved a lot. The first time he couldn't even Begin the energy rotation now that part was already through and now Naruto needed to maintain the rotation steady before beginning to focus on the power in time. You'll manage the Renin Naruto now we'll settle inside and in and head straight for the nearest waterfall, said Jia as Naruto nodded before both settled inside. For a while this place would serve as training place for both taijutsu and increasing Naruto's chakra control, seeing as they would both practice taijutsu on top of the Lake Arrow's sense. Do you have any non-elemental jutsus that you could teach me, asked Naruto, which make Ja think for a while. There is one defensive jutsu I invented, but I'm afraid you won't be able to do this one. The technique is called Ninu Hari Jizu Ninja Art Underworld Guardian Spikes and is a defensive jutsu and consists of focusing chakra through your hair and to sharp its edges before covering your whole body with it in a taijutsu match. Once you do this, if the opponent is stupid enough to hit you, will be stabbed because of the hair spikes. However, I'm able to do this because my hair is long enough while yours is not, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who then proceeded to find a way out of this predicament. If I were to focus more chakra than the technique normally required, then maybe I wouldn't need to grow my hair. What are the hand signals needed for it, asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya smiled and showed him the technique, or at least which hand seals were needed. When Naruto attempted, his hair immediately became more sharpened. But instead of covering the whole body, Naruto's hair only managed to cover his head and his chest before dissipating. The technique. Ja was impressed nonetheless. On his first attempt, the blonde already managed to sharpen the hair enough to create needles, and with enough practice and more chakra, Naruto would be able to do the technique without having the need to grow his hair. This technique, though, had a slight outcome of growing the hair at an accelerated pace. Upon voicing it to Naruto, just shrugged it off, saying that he would worry about it later on. After a while, the two settled inside the inn and then went to the nearest waterfall. Once there, both immediately jumped and began battling each other in midair before landing on the water. Practicing tattoo on the water was good for two reasons. First of all, it would be a great help to increase chakra control, because Naruto would have to focus on maintaining the chakra flow below his feet while fighting against Jia, and the second reason is tattoo experience. After watching each other for a while, Naruto channeled chakra to his legs and charged Jara with a roundhouse kick, to which Jara used his arms to block it and then aimed a straight punch to Nar's chest. Seeing the move, Nar flipped his body while in midair and grabbed Jia's arm before pushing it away from the direction of this chest. After landing once again on the water, Naruto charged once more, this time with a series of punches as Jia was blocking them. He smiled, seeing that not only his speed between movements increased but also the fact that Naruto was landing some heavy blows in enough time the pervert wouldn't need to worry about holding back in a straight taijutsu fight, and that was saying something. Jiraiya flipped his body for a reverse kick straight to Naruto's face, but the blonde did a back flip and evaded the attack before aiming for a low kick straight to Jia's legs. Jumping, Jiraiya thought to test the Gak's evasive techniques by making some hand seals for Kadenhauen can no jutsu fire release. Mythical fire phoenix jutsu. Instantly Jara expelled consecutive 2 feet fireballs at Naruto, who in turn cursed his sensei for using ninjutsu before focusing chakra in his feet and started running. The fireballs were hitting the water inches from Naruto's position to the pace would have to be increased. Managing to steadily dodge the incoming fireballs, Naruto had to think of something to turn the odds. Looking at Jiraiya, he managed to see a log that was floating behind him, giving him the perfect tactic to get Jia. Upon seeing the last fireball, he ran straight to it, not bothering to hear Jia's protest of stupidity. The fireball engulfed him completely until Naruto was suddenly replaced by a log. The pervert was dead silent and wondering what was going on, until he turned around only to see Naruto's foot landing a straight kick on his face, thus sending him down. Looking at the blonde, Jiraiya couldn't help but applaud the blonde for the deceiving tactic. Even in the middle of a tight situation, the blonde had managed to calm down and think of a way through it. Congrats, Naruto, although don't ever do such a crazy maneuver like that unless you're absolutely sure you'll be able to complete it. Remember, I've seen ninjas dying because they attempted something new in the midst of battle. Remember always to use the skills you're most experienced with and you'll have a higher chance of winning the battle. Now proceed with some taijutsu against your clones and then we'll begin our meditation exercise, explained Jia, earning a nod from Naruto before he summoned 4 clones and began to practice some fighting. This time Jiraiya was already at the shore of the river, just watching the blonde as he fought with a grace particular to a chunin. against his clones since they began the training 2 weeks ago. Naruto trained non-stop to acquire this form of taijutsu. Upon looking at his arms, Jiraiya began to feel the pain of Naruto's punches as his arms were a little numb. That glove of his is really magnificent. Not only does he more damage with his punches, but they are also enabling the user to focus some chakra in it, thus powering up the blows. Imagine when he learns how to use food in chakra and channel it through his gloves, he could invent a new taijutsu style called Wind Fist or Hurricane Fist. Shuken Hurricane Fist has a nice ring to it. Maybe I can talk to him about it when we begin food and training, thought Jiraiya. The pervert was having a weird sensation. He remembered being this insightful over someone else's training only when he trained the Yandi Hokage. At the time, Minato's growth was so astounding that Jiraiya was beginning to think of ways to improve even further. Now with Nar, it was the same, and Gia couldn't help but connect the similarities between father and son as he saw Naruto battling against the cage buns. Suddenly the teacher part resurfaced as he saw Naruto committing a minor flaw. Naruto, keep your arms up and don't let yourself open while attacking. You'd be vulnerable to the enemy otherwise, shouted Gia before hearing a scream in agreement from the blonde and positioned his arms better in order to not let his guard open. Now feeling content with Naruto's form, Jiraiya just stood to watch as Naruto jumped real high and threw one shuriken against the clones before beginning a fast series of hand seals for Ninpu Shuriken Kage Bunshin no Jutsu Ninja Art Shuriken Shadow Clone. Immediately the lonely shuriken was suddenly quadrupled and pierced through all the remaining clones, thus dispelling them all at once before the real one landed on top of the water while holding his head from a sudden headache. This happened every time he battled against clones. Every time when a clone is dispelled, Naruto immediately received images on his mind as if the clone's memory was actually his. He couldn't understand why this thing happens. Jiraiya for his part smiled, acknowledging the blonde's discovery as he walked casually towards the wondering blonde. It seems you discovered the secret behind the cage, Bunyan said Jiraiya as he stopped in front of the blonde, who in turn looked at him startled. What secret? What are you talking about? Ero-sensei asked Naruto while massaging his temples a bit in order to ease the pain after a cage Bunyan is dispelled. Everything he saw, heard or read is sent straight to the real one. This technique is originally intended to be used for infiltration purposes alone by sending a cage bunshin inside a castle, for example. The clone could see where the traps and guards are before dispelling and sending the information to the real one. I bet that after you dispelled the clones, you received images from the clone's point of view. Am I right? asked Jiraiya before seeing Naruto nod, and Jiraiya continued, this is a good bonus for you, Naruto. Because of your chakra capacity, we could use the clone's abilities to decrease the time needed for us to train. Something like, for instance, the Renin and the Hari Jizu technique, explained Jiraiya, waiting for the information to sink in before he saw Naruto's smile almost reaching the boy's ears. Deciding to contain the boy's enthusiasm, Jiraiya asked the blonde if he wanted some lunch, to which Naruto eagerly accepted as he was hungry as hell, earning laughter from Gia, and together they turned back to the inn in search for some food. On the way back, Naruto summoned 2 cage bunyan, and all 3 of them attempted the second part of the Rengen. Upon seeing this, Jiraiya smiled. Upon seeing that the blonde already grasped the meaning behind the cage bunshin training inside the restaurant once back at the end, the 2 went to the place's restaurant that happened to be a sushi restaurant. Hearing this, the blonde asked if there was any ramen before being slapped on the head by Jiraiya, who instructed Naruto to eat more healthy food in order to grow stronger and be better prepared to defend the village. Upon hearing this, Naruto couldn't help but nod and decided to try this sushi. As they sat at the table and placed their orders, Jiraiya began asking Naruto about his training so far. Nar was enthusiastic, that's for sure. He began to speak about how useful that the restriction seals were and how it helped him to grow stronger and faster arrows. Sensei, do you have any seals that could provide an aid in battle? I never seen you using any, and I was wondering if Fuinjitsu could be used in battle, asked Naruto, to which Jian nodded. Fuinjitsu requires a lot of precision and chakra control, and using it in battle is not advisable for one. Any Fuin technique requires some level of concentration, and the enemy won't necessarily wait for you to finish the move. The last shinobi who used sealing techniques in battle was the Yandi with his horn. Other than that, those seals are used mostly as exploding tags. However, the Tam Orochimaru managed to invent something, although it isn't necessarily useful, said Jiraiya before Naruto asked what it was, to which Jiraiya Continued, it's called CIO's Reicho Kenka Summoning Lightning Blade Creation, and it consists of 2 seals located on the user's wrists in order to summon any time of projectiles you want to the seal. Itself is easy to make. If you want, I can do it for you afterwards. In order to activate it, you just have to tap 2 fingers at the seal and focus some chakra to it. The projectile of choice will appear immediately. Do you want this skill? Naruto asked Jiraiya, earning a prompt nod from the blonde. With this technique I wouldn't have to worry about carrying Shanzar Kai, plus I won't have to reach my holster for it, making more space for other survival equipment, said Naruto, burning a nod from Jiraiya, who in turn asked the blonde to extend his arms with his hand palms facing the ceiling. The seal engraving will hurt, so hang in there, said Jiraiya as his finger suddenly glowed with chakra before he began to inscribe the needed seal on Naruto's wrist. Jiraiya was right when he said the procedure would be painful. Naruto was gritting his teeth in agony while he was feeling the wrist burning while in contact with Jia's glowing finger. After a while the right hand wrist was done, leaving only the left one. Jiraiya explained that for the procedure to be complete both wrists had to be done at the same time. Naruto nodded, saying that he was now more accustomed to the pain, to which Jia nodded and proceeded to do the next hand. They're all done, Naruto. We'll place a ribbon around it to help ease the pain and then we can take it off. I however advise you not to take the bandage off if surprise is what you're aiming for. We could use a ribbon that covers the entire forearm and no one will see the seal until it's too late. Also, we could initiate from your hand as well, seeing as these gloves of yours hurt a little bit to use. No, said Jiraiya as he took off Naruto's gloves and began the job. In minutes Jiraiya managed to cover the seal as well as Naruto's hand before the meal arrived. Nar could only stare at the food in front of him as he wondered if it is any good compared to ramen. He looked at what appeared to be rice with salmon on top of it and grabbed one. After eating it he was feeling kind of strange, seeing that the food didn't exactly require much chewing. However, when Naruto swallowed, he actually liked the new food. Looking at his plate, he took the next one and this time dipped with a black sauce that followed the dish. The result was even better and Naruto ate the whole plate the same way he ate ramen. I'll take it. You like sushi? Naruto said Jiraiya as he smiled at Naruto's face when enjoying a meal. Liking it is an understatement. Aos sensei, it's delicious. It's nothing compared to ramen, but at least now I found other food to eat besides the noodles, said Naruto before he called the waiter and asked for more sushi, earning a smile from Jiraiya. In Konoha Hospital. Inside the village's hospital, Tsunade and Shizen were visiting a kunoichi member of the U forces as she was interned from heavy bruises and severe chakra exhaustion. The person was from U, so any data regarding the kunoichi was restricted to a new personnel in the Hokage herself. Tsunade was reviewing the treatment on the patient history board and wasn't pleased at all. This was the second time the woman had to come to the hospital with the same level full of bruises and chakra exhaustion, and quite frankly Tsunade was concerned with her health. She spoke with the U commander and he reported the kind of missions that U member CAD made, and it unnerved the Hokage since she knew it was the very person who was being treated that requested being sent to S-ranked missions, aka certain death. Shizen was also concerned for her once colleague at the academy and she feared that the death of her friend's lover may have caused this desire to do missions non-stop. Unfortunately, there have been cases of solitary ninjas who choose to go to suicide missions in hopes of forgetting their inner pain. She remembered when one Hatake Kakashi did this while in U Black Ops just after his last friend Ren was assassinated by the enemy. What are you thinking? Shizen asked Tsunade as she flipped the page from the history board. I don't know, she keeps doing this, Tsunade Sama. I don't know how she is feeling right now, but she can't just keep going to these suicide missions. She will end up killed, stated Shizen, earning a sigh in dismay from Tsunade, who was thinking between these lines as well. I know, Shizen, but I can't do anything to stop her from doing so. According to the Anu commander, she is the one requesting to do these so-called suicide missions. I can't simply overrule her will on this. I wish I could, but I can't. We can only hope that she manages to overcome whatever it is she's feeling right now and stop this nonsense. I'm sure someone already tried to talk to her, but she didn't listen. Come on, Shizen, we'll leave her rest for the time being. This mission took a lot out of her and I'm afraid she'll be here for quite a while to recover, said Tsunade, to which Shizen nodded and followed the blonde Hokage out of the room, thus leaving the purple-haired Anu alone to rest. With Naruto. After lunch, Naruto and Ja returned to the waterfall. But this time not to train taijutsu, this time Jiraiya would be introducing the so-called meditation technique he spoke a while ago. Naruto, we'll do that exercise I talked about early, and for that I'll call some company, said Jiraiya as he bit his thumb and proceeded with the hand seals needed. For the coaches, suddenly two toads appeared with the exact same appearance. The only difference was that one was the size of a horse and the other the size of a pony. Naruto, meet Jiney and his son Giki. They will aid us with this exercise, said Jia before the two toads jumped on the water and swam towards the waterfall. Turning to Naruto, Jiraiya turned to explain the exercise. This exercise consists of controlling the flow of chakra inside your inner coils by focusing on a single hand seal. You'll close your eyes and imagine yourself controlling the chakra through the chakra pathways. By doing this, you'll learn to be more controlled in tough situations and manage to think clearly despite being interrupted by the enemy. Now strip to your boxers and let's join them under the waterfall, explained Jia, to which Naruto nodded and took off his clothes before jumping on the water and waited for the little toad to swim under him and lift him a little bit. In minutes, they began to receive the brutal punishment of gravity as the 60-foot waterfall came crushing on their shoulders. Jiraiya immediately made the simple hand seal and began to control his chakra inside him, thus ignoring all sense of pain from the water falling on his shoulders. The toads were as well not bothered by the water. However, Naruto was finding it difficult to concentrate while receiving tons and tons of water on his shoulders. Seeing this, Jiraiya instructed Naruto as to the key of getting this exercise, that was to focus 100% on the chakra traveling inside him and worry not about pain on the outside. Closing his eyes once more, Naruto made the hand seal and tried to focus on his inner chakra. It took a while, but then he managed to let loose of the pain from the water and straightened his posture. This exercise served as means to get to know your chakra better, in means of knowing just how much is needed for everything. Also, as Naruto learned how to do it, all of his senses of the outside world simply vanished, thus entering in a sort of trance. The toads looked at him and were surprised to see the blonde already being able to meditate before returning to their trance as well. Back to Naruto, he reached a state of self-awareness so great that his mind began to race through all the events of his life so far. Naruto often wondered what he could have done differently, so he was imagining all these situations and placed different scenarios like he using the techniques he knew now against Haku and Zabuza, or even against Nei at the Chunin exams, also the fight against the Kaya and also the one against Sake at the Valley of the End. Naruto was doing just like the pervert instructed. His chakra was traveling through his body. However, when his chakra reached Sao's cage, it woke the fox, who in turn opened his eyes to see that in front of him Naruto's chakra was filling the entire room. Very interesting. The brat is focusing on manipulating his chakra inside his body, and he happened to focus as much of it here near my cage. Nevertheless, I can see that his chakra capacity increased ever since he left with the pervert to train. I guess now the imbecile will learn to fight and not embarrass me again, said Kaui as he closed his eyes once more and returned to sleep. A couple of hours passed and Naruto was still feeling his chakra when suddenly Jiraiya landed a hand on his shoulders, making Naruto open his eyes. When he opened them, he realized that the sun was just about to settle down, and then he looked to a smiling Jiraiya. You managed to complete the exercise, Naruto. Why don't we head back to the inn and get some sleep? Tomorrow we'll begin your Rengen training, and I kind of hope that you can complete it by tomorrow despite it not being your goal for this year, said Jia, earning a nod from Naruto. Before they went to the shore and grabbed their clothes on the way to the inn, Naruto and Ja discussed about Naruto's attempt on meditation. Arrow sensei, I wanted to talk to you about the fox, asked Naruto, earning a look in surprise from Jiraiya because of the subject. When my chakra reached the fox's cage, the usual tension inside that place was suddenly diminished greatly. Do you know why, asked Naruto, to which Ja turned to think for a while. Naruto, the seal placed on the cow's cage acts according to your chakra. It's possible that since you overflowed the room with chakra, that the seal acted strongly against the fox, thus controlling its urges. If this is true, then your chakra capacity must have increased the last couple days. While we're here, you'll be doing this exercise more times today. You managed to reach the state of trance, thus being able to look inside your own body. But meditation has also the purpose of self-awareness, and that's where I want you to be at the end of our stay here in River Country. Okay, explained Ja, to which Naruto nodded. A couple hours later, both were at their rooms snoring like crazy from chakra over usage. Next day The next day Ja and Naruto stood at a clearing in order to complete the one-handed Renin. Naruto, the first phase of the Renin you already know how to do. Let's attain to the second. Okay, after it we'll move to third and final phase. Summon close to 20 cage bunions and begin training. Keep this pace, and if you manage to go to the next one, do it while you're doing this. I'll visit one of my sources around these parts, said Jia, to which Naruto nodded before seeing the pervert leave the premises. Turning once more to the empty clearing, Naruto made the necessary hand seal for the cage bunion and used the equivalent chakra to summon his clones. However, instead of 20, Naruto chose to summon 40 clones in order to attempt the Hari Jizu technique, while the others and the real one would attempt the Rengen completion. The Hari Jizu wasn't that hard to master since Naruto on the first try had pretty much covered the basics. The problem now would be to figure out how much chakra would be needed to cover the entire body with the technique. With Rahul Sharma, Jiraiya after leaving the brat alone to his training, Jia traveled a couple miles before reaching a house in the middle of nowhere, clearly a simple two-story house in the middle of the forest would be considered like that. When Jia knocked on the door, he heard what seemed to be a couple yelling to each other before a man opened the door and shouted angrily at whoever it was in order to vent out the frustration of marrying a underscore. Upon seeing the target of the man's frustrations, he realized the huge mistake he made and immediately apologized. Jiraiya, for the mishap, my excuses. Jas-sama, I didn't see it was you at the door. It's just that Sasama is behaving like a underscore these days and it is being tough to get some rest around here, said the man known as Kurama before seeing Jiraiya wave the man off as in dismissing the issue. No problems there, Karaman. Now I was wondering if you could give me information regarding this man, said Jiraiya as he gave Kurama a picture of AC-ranked Konoha missing nin called Aado. Kurama, after seeing the picture, recognized the man instantly and informed Jia that he asked for shelter to the river country Deu, and the man gave him a house to stay not far from their location. Jiraiya appreciated the information and asked if Kurama could draw a map for him. Sure, I'll draw you a map, no problem. I'd ask though, why are you after AC rank missing nin? Surely he wouldn't be of concern to a sonin such as yourself, asked Kurama, though Jiraiya smiled and simply said that he would like to have a small conversation with a man and be on his way. I'm not of a hunter, Kurama, so I'll just leave the job for them. I'll just talk to him in order to acquire some info, that's all. Thanks for the map, by the way, said Jiraiya, to which Kurama nodded and then returned to the house where his wife started screaming for him to get a job instead of sleeping all the time. By this time, however, Jiraiya was far away from the house as possible. He needed to check if the information was accurate before he came with Naruto to battle this guy. Little did the blonde know that Jiraiya wanted to test the boy's fighting skills against a number of opponents, so he acquired the latest copy of Konoha's Bing book and selected a few enemies he knew Naruto would be able to beat. At first he wondered if the hunter nins would be angered with him for taking away their subsistence, but he dismissed it, seeing that the book was thick enough to provide a good number of hunts for everybody. Upon arriving at the place indicated on the map, Jiraiya smiled upon finding the house and even the man he was looking for returning from a forest nearby with wood on his arms for a fire. It seemed smiling once again. Jara turned and returned to where Naruto was training in order to see how the blonde was faring with the Renan. With Naruto After 2 hours of training, the clones dealing with the Hari Jizu technique were already dispelled since the technique was already mastered by Naruto, so now the blonde was left with the Rengen to master the second phase of the technique. Went down fast as Naruto with his clones needed close to 30 minutes to be able to do one-handedly. The third part, though, proved to be difficult, as now both Naro and the clones needed to use the first and second phase altogether. Also, since Naro was unable to do the technique, he was hard-pressed not to simply use a clone to aid him, and the technique would be completed. However, he needed to concentrate and finish the technique. Today his hands though were already trembling from practicing for so long, so he stopped for a while and let the clones continue. Since they didn't feel pain, the clones protested a little, but returned to doing the Rengen single-handedly. Minutes passed and the technique was slowly being formed, only to dissipate seconds later. It was unnerving to say the least. Getting annoyed, Naruto dispelled the clones and immediately felt the rush of information inside his head. The technique was almost complete, so Naruto wouldn't need a bunch of clones to cut the time resting for a while. Naruto decided to rest a little bit from slight chakra usage and loss of Stamina. This was the scene that Jiraiya came the pervert was surprised to see. Naruto resting a bit because of his excess chakra capacity, but he chose not to press it after all. Getting the blonde to calm down for a while was like a gift for the old sensei. Hello there, Naruto. How's the training going? Asked Jiraiya, earning Naruto's attention. I manage the second phase all right, but the third is a whole different thing, said Naruto, though Jiraiya was certain the blonde wasn't telling the whole truth. Jiraiya wasn't one of Sonin for nothing, and he asked why Naruto didn't manage to finish the Ranon even though Jia knew Naruto used more than 20 clones to master the Rengen. Tell me, Naruto, have you been working on something else besides the Rengen? Asked Jiraiya, seeing Naruto playing the innocent before he made hand seals and said Ninuhari Jizu ninja art. Underworld Guardian Spike's Jutsu. Jiraiya was astonished to see Naruto's hair growing, enveloping his body completely. He knew the blonde would work on more than one area at the same time because of the clone's assistance, but he never figured that Naruto would be able to master the Hari Jizu technique. Well, it seemed you managed this technique already, so I'll teach you another using the hair, but on a later date. Now show me your Renin so far, said Ja, to which Naruto nodded and extended his arm. After focusing the necessary chakra, the ball began its formation before being completed. For 2 seconds Naruto cursed once more his inability to do the damn technique, but Ja was too much lost in wonder to hear him complain. The technique execution was flaw, and all it needed was to maintain the technique's rotation and strength instead of stopping after getting the ball done. Is it possible that this brat managed to truly learn the Renin in less than 6 months, thought Jiraiya as he heard Naruto continued the complaint. Naruto, stop complaining and try maintaining the rotation and force of the technique instead of releasing once, making it, instructed Jia, to which Naruto cursed once more and attempted one more time. This time though he did as instructed by Jiraiya, only to see the technique completed right in front of his eyes. Both he and Jiraiya marveled to see the energy being contained within a small sphere. Congratulations, Naruto, you manag the Renin single-handedly. Now it's time to learn how to expand the ball size to at least double of your current one. However, I believe we covered enough ground for today, so let's wait for tomorrow for more training. Now remember when I said you would get to face different opponents? Asked Jia, to which Naruto nodded before receiving the picture of the missing nin. Naruto, this is serious right now. I understand you're getting stronger and you have a good battle experience for a Chunin, however you still need to feel the pressure of fighting someone who could kill you if you're not careful enough. I know you sensed Mimi Zaba's killing intent, and I agree was quite threatening. However, you didn't sense the full killing intent cause it wasn't directed towards you but at Kakashi instead, explained Jiraiya, earning a nod from Naruto, who understood what the pervert wanted to say. A ninja is required to kill, and as such he's also subjected to being killed by the one he was supposed to eliminate. Killing someone was a strange concept to Naruto, even though he remembered being seconds away from killing Haku at Wave Country. If he wasn't able to control his urges, so you're suggesting that I kill this missing nin, said Naruto, to which Ja nodded with a serious expression. I wouldn't do this normally, Naruto, however your first kill is going to be tough on you, believe me. Ask any ninja in Konoha that has killed already and they will tell you how hard it was to overcome this phase. Nevertheless, while as dangerous, it's necessary to overcome this for the future, said Jia, to which Naruto let out a sigh in dismay before agreeing with the idea. So what do you know about this man's abilities? Asked Naruto, to which Jiraiya smiled and showed the man's page from the bingo book. The man called Aado is considered a C-ranked missing nin with skills equivalent to a Chunin. He is a mid-level fighter with knowledge of Kaden ninjutsu and proficiency in taijutsu. His Kaden ninjutsu was limited though to a couple techniques, so according to the book it wouldn't be life-threatening. He is located a few miles away from here, so we'll go there right now and face him. Are you ready? Asked Jia, earning a nod from Naruto. I can't say I know what will be like once the battle starts, but I'm ready as I'll ever be. After all, it's either kill or be killed, right? Said Naruto, receiving a nod of confirmation from Jiraiya, who smiled and then asked Naruto to follow him on the way. Naruto asked Jiraiya if he was supposed to fight more of these missing nins for his training before seeing Jain nod in the negative. This will be the only one. The next ones will be people from other villages, since you'll have to face different enemies with different abilities in order to improve your abilities as shinobi. With enough battle experience, you'll be able to choose exactly what techniques to use and when to use them. Now let's hurry before our Guide disappears on a said jaw, to which Naruto nodded and followed the pervert towards the place where Naro would have his fight near the missing nin's location hiding behind a tree, not at all bothering to their presences, since according to Jiraiya they were testing the man's awareness of enemies. Naruto saw his target and frowned a bit. The man didn't look much, probably 20 years old. But his presence wasn't as strong as those he faced before, probably low Tunin level. Nar wondered. Gia turned to him and observed Nar for a while before smiling once again. The boy was learning faster than he thought. Naruto was analyzing the man, hoping to learn as much as possible from Otto. Naruto, I'll leave you against him. It will be you who will defeat him. I'll be close by in case you are in need of help. Okay, asked Gia. Before seeing Naruto nodding at him. Okay, I'm ready to do this, said Nar as he began to approach the enemy while suppressing his chakra. Nar wasn't stupid to hope that he would be able to sneak behind the enemy and simply slit his throat with a kani. However, he hoped at least to cover as much ground as possible in order to have the upper hand in battle. After a while, when Nar entered the open field, he took out a kunai from his holster and only waited for an attack from Aado, which soon came as the man flipped his body fast and threw a couple of shuriken towards Naruto. Using the kunai, Naruto managed to block them all and jump in order to be in front of Aado before addressing the man. Aado, from your crimes against Konoha and as a shinobi from the village, I'll be the one to kill you. Prepare yourself, said Naruto. Before taking his stance of fighting, Aado for his part began to snicker in total underestimation at the blonde's ability. Itties get serious, kid. What are you, a Janine? I thought Konoha would send hunter nins against me. Not a little. Janine, I guess they underestimate me, stated Otto, earning a snarl from Naruto, who didn't like being underestimated like that. Underestimating the enemy isn't a nice thing to do. You could be caught by surprise, but I'm afraid that is only one way of knowing this, doesn't it? Asked Naruto, earning a nod from Otto, who at least would like the warm-up of beating a genin from out of nowhere. Aado charged against Naruto with a powerful punch, but Naruto managed to evade and twisted his body and landed a straight reverse kick on A's chest. The man was taken aback by the sudden increase of speed and even passed his hand on the wounded area, surprised that it was hurting like hell. Looking at the blonde, the man snarled in anger. How dare this boy! Otto thought. He decided to not hold back any more, molding some chakra. Aado began some hand seals before whispering, Kaden Gakyu no Jutsu, fire release great fireball jutsu. Suddenly the fireball erupted from A's mouth and charged towards Naruto. The blonde for his part smirked at the insignificant size of the fireball. Both Sasu's and Gia's fireball were at least 3 and 4 times bigger respectively, and he managed to dodge it, charging some chakra on his feet. Naruto used it to dash to the right and charged against the man with a straight chakra-powered punch to the man's jaw before hitting straight on because of the power behind the punch. Otto was sent flying. Naruto, however, didn't stop his attack as he made hand seals for Gershin no Jutsu. Torpedo needles jutsu. Instantly chakra needle began its formation around Naruto's body until he shot them straight at Otto, who was still in midair. The needles hit the target and immediately A's body was pierced multiple times. Instantly blood splattered everywhere and the man fell down on his knees, since some of those needles happened to pierce the legs muscles. Aado looked at the blonde now with blood in his eyes. This technique was strange. He thought Aado wasn't familiar with the concept of chakra manipulation since he was still when he left Konoha. However, he knew a normal genin would know how to use chakra like the blonde used. Looking at the blonde one more time, Aado found that he was now feeling fear. He knew someone would come eventually and that he would have to face whoever it was, but he was in no way prepared to die as the blonde approached him. As Otto could see, the boy's eyes, as not familiarized to the world of killing, his pure cerulean eyes did well to show Zato of Naruto's Inik regarding the true way of the ninja. Nar for his part wondered what he would do right now. Clearly the man was incapacitated since his needles managed to pierce his legs muscles, so his movements were nullified. However, the thought of simply grabbing his kunai and cutting the man's jugular sickened the blonde to no end. The blonde wondered if by killing others he would be compared to the one living inside of him. If I can't do this, what will happen if I'm unable to deal properly with those who pose a threat to Konoha, thought Naruto as he picked his kunai once more. Without thinking, Naruto did pretend that he was pulling off a band-aid. He positioned the kunai on the guy's neck and without wondering any more about what may happen from now on, Naruto did killed for the first time. He just killed a man who was already beaten Instantly Naruto's eyes were lifeless as he looked at A's dead body while knowing it was him who killed the man. Jiraiya was already there by his side and wondered what the blonde must be thinking right now. The fight was quite one-sided, and if Naruto used the Renin, the fight would be over before it started. However, the whole point of fighting missing nins was learning the harsh reality of killing like a ninja, and Naruto would just have to face this issue and surpass it with time.